Chapter 98. Since we're going to deal with people from the evil sex, then second uncle's purchase this time was correct. Didn't you say you wanted 800 arrows? Second uncle bought 3,000 arrows for you this time. There are also 30 bows and 100 swords. They're all in the front 3 carriages. These 3 carriages are also ours. Arbor's eyes lit up and she nodded happily. Second uncle was indeed reliable. The little fellow was happy, but her face was expressionless. Xiao Zhongxing was also used to his niece's stoic face, and didn't expect her to show any expression. He pulled her small hand, and walked towards the 20 or so carriages behind them. Many workers were unloading the goods, and were almost done. The goods were all piled up beside the carriages. The stacks of boxes and baskets dazzled the eyes. Arbor's gaze was fixed on the 100 wine jars, and the corner of her mouth twitched slightly. Second uncle was really smart. He had even prepared enough wine for them. Jojo, let me tell you, this food and drink is enough for the 6 of us to eat for half a year, let alone 3 months. As he spoke, he proudly scooped up a wine jug and placed it in his hand. This is the highest quality bamboo leaf wine. The shopkeeper saw that I asked for a lot, so he gave me a discount. 100 coins per jug. 1 jar is enough for me and your father to drink for 4 to 5 days. Saying this, he laughed at Arbor. Jojo, this much wine costs 10 taels. You won't dislike second uncle for buying this, right? Arbor shook her head. Second uncle, you're treating me like an outsider. That's true. Xiao Zhongxing laughed heartily, and continued to pull Arbor's small arm forward, excitedly introducing the items he bought. Second uncle's purchase could be considered to have a complete range of varieties. Just the variety of vegetables, meat, and poultry was enough to make people speechless. As Arbor looked, she silently understood second uncle's words. What did it mean to eat for half a year without a problem? The most valuable thing was that second uncle also bought 5 boxes of spices, nearly 20 boxes of medicine, and 2 carriages of various fruits. As Qiao Mu looked at these unloaded goods, she felt her heart settle down a lot. With these basic supplies, their family would not need to be afraid no matter where they wandered. She was confident that even if they were in a chaotic world, they would still be able to live a decent life. Thank you, second uncle. Arbor held Xiao Zhongxing's big, rough hand tightly, and said in a weak voice. Xiao Zhongxing was stunned. He smiled and reached out to rub Arbor's little head. Silly child, why are you being so polite with second uncle? What's more, second uncle didn't make this trip in vain. Didn't we earn back these 100 jars of wine? Xiao Mu curved her lips. Xiao Zhongxing pulled her to the last carriage, where hundreds of cloth bags of different sizes were placed. Xiao Zhongxing opened a bag and showed it to Arbor. These are seeds. Second uncle bought them at a stall. Some cost a few copper coins, some cost a few hundred copper coins. Second uncle bought them blindly. See if they're useful. Arbor took second uncle's open bag, grabbed a few seeds, and looked at them in her palm. She leaned forward and sniffed them, then nodded naturally. These are the seeds of hemostasis grass. They can be used to make the most basic hemostasis ointment. Xiao Zhongxing immediately smiled. Then they're useful. That peddler didn't lie to me. But Jojo, second uncle didn't expect that you would know a thing or two about medicinal seeds at such a young age. Arbor couldn't help but be stunned. Her little hand holding the seeds stiffened slightly, and a strange feeling surfaced in her heart. That's right. How did she know that these were the seeds of hemostasis grass? Chapter 99. Second uncle, take these people and leave first. Arbor gave her uncle a look, and Xiao Zhongxing immediately understood. He nodded and gestured for those workers to pull the 20-odd carriages away. Jojo must have her reasons for sending these people away, so Xiao Zhongxing did not ask further. Aoyi. Arbor softly called out after seeing the carriages leave one after another. The black-clothed youth appeared not far behind her like a shadow and cupped his hands in greeting. Little master. Arbor nodded. Use your mystic senses to sense if anyone is spying nearby. This time, she was more cautious. With her current level 3 mystic cultivator perception, she was definitely not as good as Aoyi's. Otherwise, she would not have attracted the ghost sex people last time. Aoyi nodded and silently released his mystic senses to sense. After a while he replied, "Little master, don't worry. There are no abnormal presences within a radius of 5 kilometers." Arbor nodded slightly before focusing on her dantian. She saw that the sapling was still sickly and drooping without any changes. However, a few of its branches were tightly hugging the heart of paradise and had not moved at all. Arbor sighed. If a storage talisman could store these things, she would be too lazy to take out the heart of paradise. A mystic energy coiled around the heart of paradise and pulled, but the sapling hugged it tightly and did not show any signs of letting go. After a few times, Arbor was very helpless and could only use a negotiating tone to say to the sapling, "Chio-chio." For some reason, she clearly felt that the sapling in her dantian seemed to have been shaken by her call, and 2 bare branches trembled slightly. "Chio-chio, I'll borrow your heart of paradise for a while. 15 minutes, no, I'll return it to you in 7 minutes, okay? Look, there are so many things here, I have to take them away." Aggrieved, our dear Xiao Mu wanted nothing more than to shed tears of sympathy for herself. She had never seen such an aggrieved master. The heart of paradise was clearly a mystic domain that she had refined, okay? Why did she have to get the damn tree's permission every time she wanted to use it? The inner world was a pit, and so was the peach springs. Arbor silently mourned for a while. She thought to herself that it was true that when a tree fell, a person would run away. No matter what, she could only rely on herself to draw talismans. Next time, if she could buy blank talisman paper, she would draw 180 storage talismans and use them comfortably. In the center of her dantian, the sapling, which had originally drooped its branches, seemed to understand her words and really let go of the heart of paradise. Arbor heaved a sigh of relief. He hastily summoned the heart of paradise and put away the items on the ground in an orderly manner, temporarily placing them in a large open space behind the peach forest. The open space behind the peach forest was very large. After putting all these materials in, there was still more than half of the space left empty. Arbor pulled down the reins and put in the 2 carriages full of fruit. Only then did they fill up the space behind the peach forest. Arbor heaved a sigh of relief. Her small face was still expressionless, but she was secretly bursting with joy. The more she looked at the resources, the more delighted she became. Because living things couldn't be put in the peach springs, Arbor could only tie the horses to a tree at the side and wait for second uncle to come back and take them away. Recalling that he had promised the little foodie to bring her peaches to eat, Arbor focused her gaze on the translucent valley in the sky. She remembered that there was a luxuriant peach tree in the center of the peach forest. It seemed to have borne fruit. At that time, she had only taken a quick glance. Today, after looking carefully, she had indeed discovered it. There were 3 peaches on the peach tree. They hung stingily from the branches, but each of them was twice the size of an adult's fist. They looked fresh and fragrant, and Arbor wanted to eat them. Chapter 100. After thinking it over, Xiaomu simply took out all 3 peaches and temporarily stored the peach she was going to give Shaolin, into a yellow storage talisman, keeping it close to her body. This talisman was an exemplary talisman gifted by the Golden Talisman Jade Tome. Of the 4 storage talismans she drew, 2 of them were filled with things for her, and the other 2 were given to her mother to pack up the household utensils. It seemed that the top priority now was to hurry to Shizhou City. There was bound to be a place that sold blank talismans. When Qiao Zhongxing returned, he saw the little lass squatting under a tree at the side. She was holding a rather good-looking peach in both hands and munching on it happily. Qiao Zhongxing couldn't help but laugh. This was how a child should act. Normally, when Jojo acted like a little adult, she looked especially serious. She didn't look like a carefree child at all. Second uncle, eat a peach. Arbor handed him one, and then continued to munch on her own peach. As expected of a paradise, it was truly delicious. The peach flesh melted in her mouth, and the peach juice was sweet but not greasy. After eating it, the fragrance lingered in her teeth and cheeks, and the aftertaste was endless. Xiao Mu wiped her small hands, and suddenly felt a stream of hot air rapidly circulating in her mystic meridians. The little fellow was stunned for a moment, and then quickly sat down. This wandering stream of hot air quickly transformed into bits of mystic energy. It scattered in her mystic meridians and finally returned to her dantian. Arbor had been observing her dantian from the inside, so she could see it clearly now. A mystic domain the size of an olive pit suddenly appeared at the roots of that wilted sapling. It only flashed for a moment before it absorbed the bits of rich mystic energy. However, at least 2/3 of the mystic energy was absorbed by the sapling's roots. It turned out that the mystic domain didn't disappear. It was just absorbed by the sapling's roots. Arbor wished she could jump up and howl. This tree was indeed strange and abnormal. It really was absorbing her mystic energy. Mystic energy. Just now, she had painstakingly accumulated a bit of mystic energy and finally managed to circulate it in her mystic meridians. In the end, more than half of it ended up in the sapling's stomach. Why? Why did it have to eat meat while she could only drink soup? Xiaomu was extremely depressed. Fortunately, after the slight impact of the hot air, the mystic meridians in her body seemed to be a little thicker than before. A level 4 mystic cultivator. Xiaomu's eyes lit up. She had unknowingly advanced. What was going on? Could it be related to that peach? Although the amount of profound energy earlier wasn't much, but the quality was extremely rich. Every drop of profound energy was comparable to the thin profound energy stored in her body. Could it be that cultivation advancement was closely related to the concentration of profound energy cultivated in the profound veins? Arbor supported her small chin with one hand and thought carefully. That spiritual tree seemed to be only interested in the rich Xian energy of the outside world. For example, just now, and also previously when she absorbed the Xian energy of the entire paradise in the secret realm, she probably didn't even drink the broth at that time, as it all went into the little tree's stomach. As for his daily training of his profound veins, the profound energy that he cultivated was extremely thin, and most likely would not be able to enter the eyes of the enlightened tree, so it had no interest in coming over to snatch it. After figuring this out, Arbor couldn't help but chuckle. Then there was no then. She couldn't snatch the tree, so crying was useless. When she turned around, she saw second uncle open his eyes and jump up in excitement. Jojo, second uncle discovered that after eating this peach, his body cultivation broke through to the 3rd level. Second uncle has been stuck at this level for a very long time. I didn't expect. Second uncle was so excited that he couldn't even finish his sentence. Chapter 101. Only those who had truly become a body cultivator would know how painful the body forging stage was. In order to strengthen their bodies and obtain strength that was stronger than normal people, they had to put in much more effort than mystic cultivators. Mystic cultivators simply couldn't understand this kind of ordeal. Mystic cultivators could be said to be a race deeply favored by the heavens. Normally, as long as one became a mystic cultivator, their physique would improve greatly. While cultivating mystic energy, it would also gradually strengthen their physique, so there was simply no need to go through the extra step of body forging. On the other hand, body cultivators completely relied on external forces to continuously increase their resistance to pressure and improve their physique after undergoing hellish training. Body cultivators advanced very slowly. Every transformation of the physical body depended on one's constitution. Some people with poor constitutions would stay at the first level of body forging for their entire lives. But this time, after eating this peach, Qiao Zhongxing suddenly realized that he had painlessly transitioned to the 3rd level of body forging. It was truly a cultivation experience that he had never had before. Such a comfortable advancement caused him to be a bit stupefied even now, thinking that he was in a dream. One had to know that he had been stuck at the 2nd level of body forging for a full 3 years. It was quite inconceivable that he had advanced so quickly. On the other hand, Arbor didn't feel anything after suddenly advancing to a level 4 mystic cultivator. Her face was expressionless and calm as usual. Heh, what was there to be excited about? If she had taken all of the mystic energy in the paradise for her own use that day, let alone a level 4 mystic cultivator, she might have even become a level 6 or level 7 mystic cultivator. Thinking about how unkind the spirit tree was, Xiao Mu's heart felt stifled. Arbor's brows involuntarily twitched when she realized that her second uncle had happily picked her up. To be honest, she was already in her 30s, so she really didn't like other people picking her up for no reason. Xiao Zhongxing didn't carry her for too long, and placed her on the carriage with a chuckle. He jumped onto the carriage and whipped the horse, causing the carriage to gallop back to the village. After sending Arbor home, Xiao Zhongxing immediately turned back, and led the remaining 5 yellow-maned horses home. Wei Ziqin prepared a table of dishes, and invited Xiao Zhongbang into the courtyard to drink with him. Arbor was not hungry for the time being, so he walked out with a horse in each hand. Xiao Zhongbang stared at his eldest daughter's back with a complicated gaze. Xiao Zhongxing took a sip of the bamboo wine and narrowed his eyes. He glanced at Xiao Zhongbang and asked, "Big brother, what's wrong with you?" "Jojo, that kid." Xiao Zhongbang heaved a long sigh. This child had changed too much. Sometimes he was so unfamiliar that he couldn't help but feel apprehensive. Xiao Zhongxing put down his chopsticks and shook his head at his older brother. "Big brother, it's not that I want to criticize you, but Jojo is such a sensible and good child. It's hard to find one even with a lantern. What are you dissatisfied with?" "Today, your sister-in-law told me that she will move out of the village in 2 days." Xiao Zhongbang's expression was complicated. When he first heard this, he thought that his wife was joking with him. They had lived in Quoto village for so many years, and had always been living well. How could they move out just like that? Xiao Zhongxing rubbed his nose. "I heard about this too. So be it. This isn't a good place anyway. Big brother, let me tell you." When Arbor was far away, she threw the Qiao brothers' long-winded conversation to the back of her mind. She led the horse into the nearby courtyard of Qiao Lu's house. Qiao Lu's aunt heard the noise and quickly walked out. "Jojo is here." Chapter 102. Sixth Aunt Xiao welcomed Arbor in and said with a bleak and bitter smile, "Jojo, you're so considerate, coming to visit your sister Xiaoyao again. She's in her room, but she still doesn't want to see anyone." The incident that happened at the Quoto village market that day was still vivid in his mind. 12-year-old Xiaoyu was publicly humiliated by hyenas. Her clothes were nearly torn to shreds, and too much of her skin was exposed in front of people. Although she was the victim, in the eyes of the closed-off Quoto village villagers, Xiaoyu was already an impure woman. 2 days ago, there were even a few ignorant village women who clamored about burning Xiaoyu to death to purify Quoto village. He really didn't know what those people's brains were made of. Xiaoyu didn't dare to go out at all during this period. She couldn't face the villagers pointing and gossiping, and even more couldn't face that humiliating experience directly. Arbor sighed. If Xiaoyu didn't dare to walk out herself, no one could help her. Although the current world was relatively tolerant of women, this was only because women were mystic cultivators, and Xiaoyu was only a normal person. Old Xiao and Sixth Aunt Xiao were both good people. In the past, when their family lacked food and clothing, Sixth Aunt Xiao would often help their family. Now that the zombie outbreak was imminent, Arbor also wanted to help them as much as he could. As for the other villagers at her age, she truly couldn't care too much. Even if she went door to door and earnestly persuaded the villagers to leave, they would only think that she was crazy. They might even think that she was possessed by a ghost and want to burn her again. Everyone had their own fate, so she hoped that they would be able to fend for themselves. "Jojo, come sit." Sixth Aunt Xiao wiped her hands on her apron and pulled Arbor to sit down. "Your sixth uncle went out to pick vegetables and hasn't returned yet. Jojo, these 2 horses of yours are?" Sixth Aunt Xiao had already seen Arbor leading the 2 horses in, so she couldn't help but look puzzled. Arbor had already tied up the horses in the courtyard and said to Sixth Aunt Xiao, "Sixth Aunt, our family will be leaving Quoto village the day after tomorrow. How about you and Sixth Uncle bring Sister Xiaoyu along? Maybe Sister Xiaoya's mood will improve after leaving Quoto village." "Why are you moving?" Jojo's sixth aunt couldn't help but be surprised. Then she smiled bitterly and shook her head. "Jojo, sixth aunt and your sixth uncle have been rooted in this village for decades. Where else can we move to? Don't worry, your sister Xiaoya is just a little stubborn. I'll go and comfort her more, and she'll be fine soon." Arbor was not so optimistic. She clearly knew that ordinary people like Xiao Lu and Xiao Lu were vulnerable in front of a zombie. That thing would kill their family of 3. She couldn't help but advise her again, but Sixth Aunt Xiao only comforted her not to think too much. She only said that after this critical juncture, the family would definitely get better. She didn't have any intention of leaving Quoto village. Arbor sighed. He had no choice but to leave 2 horses for their family. Xiao Lu's wife was so scared that she repeatedly waved her hand and said no. Although Sixth Aunt Xiao was ignorant, she also knew that the price of an ordinary horse was usually about 20 or 30 taels. How could she accept such a generous gift from Arbor? Unexpectedly, Arbor didn't wait for her to elaborate. She waved her hand and ran out of her house like a wisp of smoke. Even when she returned to the door of her house, Arbor's mood was still heavy. Her mood was indescribably grave. She looked up at the sky and saw that dusk was heavy. A jet-black cloud stretched across the horizon. It looked like it was going to rain later. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The sound of thunder was accompanied by bean-sized raindrops that pitter-pattered against the wooden window lattice. Arbor lowered the window partition. When she closed the window, she couldn't help but look at the pitch-black horizon that was like the night sea. Vaguely, she seemed to see a large bird flapping its huge wings gliding across the horizon. Arbor was stunned. Something flashed through her mind like lightning. Chapter 103. Kuhu. The cries of the nighthawks made one's heart tremble under the pitch-black night sky. 150 kilometers away from the capital, on a muddy path, there was a funeral procession of more than 10 people braving the drizzle. The procession slowly moved forward, paper money fluttering in the air like snowflakes. After walking for a while, the rain started to get heavier. Under the dark sky, a large bird spread its wings and flew past with an ear-piercing cry. The people at the front of the funeral procession suddenly stopped. A flock of black crows fluttered in their direction, causing them to hastily reach out to sweep them away. Suddenly, an ice-cold, pale hand reached out from under the coffin lid. Someone in the procession let out a shriek. The coffin fell to the ground with a thud, making a dull sound. Under the dim starlight, a pot-bellied, long-haired, white-clothed woman stood there. She slowly raised her head. When she saw the shocked expressions of the crowd, whose teeth were chattering, she didn't hesitate to charge forward with a roar. A horse procession braved the rain on the official road. Yu Xiu, wearing a straw raincoat, pulled on the reins. He frowned and listened for a while before patting his horse to follow Prince Mo. Master, did you hear any strange sounds? Prince Mo nodded. It wasn't just strange sounds. A faint smell of blood was transmitted over with the wind, allowing him to clearly know that there was an unforeseen event ahead. Everyone be careful. Yu Xiu waved his hand and ordered the 20 or so black-clothed youths accompanying him. They were about to reach the capital. With those people's temperaments, if they didn't make a move now, they wouldn't have another chance. Prince Mo absent-mindedly swept his eyes over the front, an ice-cold smile on his lips. He didn't wear a straw raincoat on his thin, ethereal white clothes. However, when the drizzle drifted to his side, it evaporated into smoke and instantly disappeared without a trace. The journey was extremely boring. His few brothers only did assassinations and assassinations. They couldn't do anything new. They weren't as interesting as his little wooden baby. When he recalled that stoic face, the smile on Mo Lian's lips deepened slightly. TSK, I'm thinking of the little guy again. Annoying. A group of more than 20 riders galloped forward, covered in dust on the official road. However, as the rain gradually increased, visibility became very low. Suddenly, a woman with a bowed head and a big belly jumped out from a muddy path and blocked the way. Yu Xiu hurriedly reined in his horse so that it would not collide with her. The group of youths were no longer hotheads. The road was vast at night, and a strange woman suddenly appeared on the dirt road. No matter how one looked at it, it was strange. Everyone immediately tensed up and silently prepared for battle. The woman was wearing a white dress that was stained with mud. Her long hair was wet from the rain and covered her face. His walking posture was very strange. His feet and hands were very stiff. Step by step, he walked down the dirt road, making people feel a little scared. Everyone be careful. Yu Xiu unsheathed his sword and took a few steps forward, pointing his sword at the woman. Halt! Who dares to play tricks here? Prince Mo raised his eyebrows and glanced at the woman who was blocking his way. In the middle of the night, he didn't have the leisure to waste time with a woman of unknown origin. She doesn't want to leave. Help her. The crown prince's indifferent voice slowly sounded. Yushio immediately raised his sword. In the blink of an eye, the woman abruptly raised her head. Her pale face was stained with blood, and her eyes were strangely protruding. She opened her mouth and let out a ghostly howl. Without waiting for Yushio to act, Prince Mo already waved his sleeves. Chapter 104. After the sound of the wind, the pale figure in the middle of the road fell down heavily. Crown Prince Mo unhappily smoothed out a crease on his sleeve, a faint sneer on his face. The assassin this time's makeup looks like a ghost's. I wonder which idiot's handiwork came from. Do you think you're a ghost just because you turned into a ghost? Do I look like I'm afraid of ghosts? What a joke. Yushio silently twitched the corner of his mouth, raised his hand with a cold face, and said to the others, "Let's continue." Wait. Prince Mo's cold voice sounded again at this time. Everyone tightened their reins in unison, waiting for orders in a well-trained manner. In front of them, the woman who fell on the ground and was covered in mud was slowly crawling up with great difficulty. Her movements were very slow, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard from time to time. Haha, this is a bit interesting. Mo Lien nonchalantly raised her eyebrows, her phoenix eyes moving slightly, smiling as she stared at the woman in front of her. That woman's left hand was unnaturally twisted, and after struggling to crawl up from the ground, she seemed to have identified Prince Mo as her target. She grimaced and staggered forward, but before she could pounce forward again, she was swept away by Prince Mo like a fly. But very quickly, the woman crawled up again. But her right leg was crippled, and her movements were very slow. Her entire body was covered in mud, and the original color of her white clothes couldn't be distinguished. Mo Lien was very clear that although 2 consecutive sweeps seemed light, in reality, even if he only used a fraction of his strength, it wasn't something a normal person could withstand. So, this woman in front of her really wasn't a human. Protect the Emperor. Protect the Emperor. Yushio saw that woman crawl up from the ground again, and immediately felt a slight chill down his spine, and couldn't help but shout loudly. What are you nervous about? Mo Lien indifferently swept a glance at Yushio, raised her wrist, and pointed in the direction of the woman. A solid ball of fire flew in front of the woman at the speed of light, and immediately pierced through her forehead, quickly burning inside her body. Although this was not the first time they had seen it, Yushio and the others still could not help but watch the scene in front of them with fear and trepidation. The Crown Prince's methods were indeed cruel. Compared to his immortal-like appearance, his gentle and elegant face, it was poles apart. He's really dead. A faint voice floated out from his lips. It was not hard to guess that there was a trace of disappointment in it. Yushio's head was filled with black lines for a moment. My lord, your flame projectile is so smooth that it can directly burn a person from head to toe into ashes. Not even a trace of brain juice is left. What can you do if you don't die? If Xiaomu were here, she would definitely curse him for being crazy. How many people had lost their lives to the corpse puppets without being able to put up any resistance? Yet, this man had taken care of them in a matter of minutes. As Mo Lien looked at the woman who had been burned into a pile of ashes, he subconsciously tapped his chin with his horsewhip as he muttered to himself. Little fellow, could this be the monster that you reminded me to keep a respectful distance from? Your Highness. Return to the capital. Mo Lien's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. Thinking of her mother and younger brother, she wondered if they were in any danger. With a light flick of the horsewhip, the group quickly disappeared into the night. Near the official road, on the muddy dirt road, there were more than 10 corpses lying haphazardly. A gloomy wind blew miserably. Suddenly, the corpses opened their bulging eyes at the same time, letting out ghostly wails and wolf howls at the dark horizon. Chapter 105. That night, it was raining cats and dogs in Kyoto village. Earbook closed the wooden window. He had been feeling uneasy, so he laid on the bed with his clothes on and listened to the sound of the rain hitting the window frame. Little Linner, who was beside him, was wearing a honey-colored jacket and holding a juicy peach in her arms. She was sprawled out in her sleep, and was even snoring softly. Arbor tossed and turned, but he couldn't fall asleep. In the latter half of the night, he heard a roar that sounded like a human coming from the east of the village, followed by a scream that pierced through the night sky. Arbor's heart shrank as if a stone had been thrown into a lake in his heart. That sound seemed to have come from Wu Yinjin's house. Arbor cursed inwardly and rolled over to sit up. He pulled his little sister into his arms and hurriedly helped her get dressed in a flurry. Little Xiaolin had trouble getting dressed with a peach in her arms. Arbor reached out to take her peach, but the foodie hugged it tightly and even whimpered in her sleep, as if she was about to cry. The latter was speechless. Xiao Mu was at her wit's end, and could only hastily drape a jacket over her body. She also casually grabbed a small blanket, directly wrapping both her and Tao inside. Arbor picked up the little foodie and pushed open the door. He happened to come face to face with Second Uncle, who had hurriedly put on his clothes and rushed over. Second Uncle must have been startled awake by the sound. Arbor hurriedly stuffed the little foodie into Second Uncle's arms. Second Uncle, hurry and wake Brother Xiaohu up. Don't pack anything. We have to leave the village immediately. We have to leave now. Take them to the carriage and wait for us. Jojo. Xiao Zhongxing vaguely felt that something had happened, but seeing Arbor leave in a hurry, he didn't have time to ask. A sense of oppression pressed down on him, causing him to involuntarily quicken his steps. He hurriedly woke his son up from the bed, hastily packed a few pieces of underwear, and braved the heavy rain to send the two children to the carriage first. Xiaohu, look after little sister. Father will go pick up your eldest sister. Xiao Zhongxing left this sentence and rushed into the rain again. Xiaohu had already woken up from his daze. Although he didn't know what had happened, seeing his father's nervous expression, he couldn't help but tense up as well. He reached out and hugged the sleeping Xiaolin tightly, clenching his fists as he waited in the carriage. Meanwhile, Xiaomu quickly rushed to her parents' room. Without caring about etiquette, she kicked open the door. The scene inside shocked her greatly, causing her heart to rise to her throat. He saw a rotten hand coming in through the window, desperately trying to grab something. If it weren't for his father's quick reflexes and throwing a teapot at the head of the bed, that hand would have grabbed his mother's arm. Xiaoqin, you go first. Xiao Zhongbang pushed his wife off the bed. Arbor rushed into the room and took a look at his father. His eyes flickered and he immediately released a burst of profound energy, cutting off the rotten hand that was about to grab his father. Don't touch. Although the level 1 zombie hadn't evolved yet, so nothing would happen even if it was caught, it was best not to take the risk. Arbor strode forward and helped his mother up from the ground. He said to his parents, who were only wearing underwear, let's go, let's leave this place first. Xiao Zhongbang put on his outer robe and quickly walked to the mother and daughter's side. Wei Ziqin was also hastily putting on her clothes. The three of them were running out the door when they heard Second Uncle call out from the door. Second Uncle, why are you here? Arbor was shocked. Thinking of the two defenseless children still in the carriage, he hurriedly said, let's go. Chapter 106. The four of them ran all the way to the entrance of the courtyard, and saw the carriage quietly parked there. The curtain of the carriage was half open, and Xiaohu, with a cautious and serious expression, was holding Xiaolin and looking outside from time to time. When he saw them running over in the pouring rain, Xiaohu's expression visibly relaxed, and he excitedly called out, Father, eldest uncle, eldest aunt. Get down. Arbor suddenly let out an angry roar. Xiaohu instinctively hugged Xiaolin and rolled into the carriage. Bang! In the blink of an eye, a stiff figure emitting a strange smell suddenly fell from the top of the carriage. The loud noise startled the horses in front, and they neighed uneasily. The monster used a lot of strength, and its foot actually pierced through the bottom of the carriage. One of its legs was stuck in the hole, and it stiffly pulled for a long time. Xiaohu sucked in a breath of cold air. He saw the monster turn its head, and a pair of bulging eyes on its deathly pale face stared fixedly at him and Xiaolin. Xiaohu was extremely flustered for a moment, and he only felt his whole body emitting a whoosh of cold air from inside out. Roar! The monster roared and reached out its claws to claw at the two of them. Xiao Hu hugged Xiao Lin and scrambled backwards, grabbing the things in the carriage and throwing them at the monster. The bags were scattered, and some clothes fell out. The monster's sharp claws immediately tore them to pieces. Little Hu. Xiaolin, whoosh. An iron arrow with astonishing power shot through the monster's head in the nick of time. All of its movements immediately stopped, and the monster fell face down on the ground, unable to get up again. The adults' anxious hearts finally relaxed a little. They turned to look at the little girl holding the crossbow at the side. They only felt that under the cold rain, the little girl's face was as cold as the moon, even colder than the rain. For no reason, it made people shudder from the bottom of their hearts. Get in the carriage. Xiaomu did not wait for them to recover from their daze, and directly jumped onto the carriage first. She effortlessly sent the level 1 zombie inside the carriage flying with a flying kick. The zombie fell heavily on the ground, its face facing the sky. Wei Ziqin looked at it in a panic and couldn't help but exclaim, "Isn't this the one from He Zi's family? Third uncle who was buried 2 days ago? What is he doing? Did it crawl out of the ground?" When Wei Ziqin thought of this, she immediately felt cold all over and couldn't help but tremble. "Sister-in-law, get in the car first," Qiao Zhongxing hurriedly urged. He watched as his sister-in-law got into the car before jumping into the driver's seat. With a flick of his wrist, he straightened the reins. Xiao Zhongbang didn't need him to say anything. He jumped onto another horse and followed the carriage in the rain. Under the pouring rain, a horse accompanied by a carriage quickly rushed out of the small courtyard. The village was in an uproar. Many villagers screamed and ran out of their houses. When they saw Arbor's carriage, they chased after it and shouted, "Second uncle, let's go." Arbor took Xiaolin in his arms and ordered calmly. The condition of their 2 carriages wasn't very good either. Not only did the zombie destroy the roof of the carriage, but it also stepped through the bottom of the carriage. Now that it was raining heavily outside and drizzling inside, everything was wet and very uncomfortable. Qiao Zhongxing wasn't stupid. He naturally knew that they couldn't even take care of themselves right now. He quickly whipped the horse, causing it to gallop forward in pain and hurry towards the entrance of the village. The calmest was Xiaolin. The commotion outside was so loud, but this girl was sleeping soundly with a peach in her arms. There were no signs of her waking up at all. She really was a big-hearted child. Chapter 107. Qiao Zhongxing yelled and made the horse speed up, riding side by side with Qiao Zhongbang. The two of them glanced at each other, and saw a monster pounce on a village woman who was madly running forward from behind. A pair of withered hands tightly strangled the village woman's neck. The woman let out an ear-piercing shriek and waved her fists and legs desperately. Before they could take a closer look, the carriage had already sped past them as fast as lightning. Behind them was a group of wailing and waving ants, who were continuously shouting, "Let us get on the carriage and please take us along." Qiao Zhongbang pursed his lips and couldn't help but turn around to take a look. He said in a hoarse voice, "Second brother. Eldest brother, we can't bring so many people." Qiao Zhongxing's face was cold and stiff as he suddenly whipped the horse, causing the pained horse to gallop forward madly. Arbor hugged Xiaolin, and sat in a corner of the carriage, avoiding the rainwater that poured in. His thin brows were tightly knitted together, and his small hands involuntarily clenched under his sleeves. 4 days, a full 4 days ahead of schedule. Originally, she had planned to set off the day after tomorrow and reach Shizhou City within 2 days. At that time, the zombie disaster would have just erupted, and their family would have already settled down in Shizhou City. But now, her plan truly couldn't keep up with the changes. She didn't know what went wrong, but the zombie outbreak in this life had actually been abruptly brought forward by so many days. It simply caught her off guard. "Aya!" Mother Wei Ziqin suddenly cried out in alarm. "What's wrong, Mother?" Arbor returned to his senses. "Is it that you haven't packed your things? Don't worry about that. We'll talk about the future in the future." No. Wei Ziqin was anxious and regretful. "I've already packed most of the things at home, and everything that can be brought has been placed in the talisman. It's that Xiao Yao girl. We ran in such a hurry that we left her at home." Xiao Mu had thought that something big had happened, so she relaxed slightly upon hearing this. It's fine, Ma. I already sent someone to inform her. I also left 2 horses at home. Don't worry, they will catch up very soon. With stay-up-late skills, these level 1 corpse puppets were nothing more than toys for him. As for Xiao Yao, Arbor had already noticed that although this girl was about the same age as Xiao Hu, she was not ordinary. She should have some skills in her hands. Otherwise, the Tycoon Crown Prince would not have placed her by her side. Upon hearing this, Wei Ziqin felt relieved. She nodded and said, "Child, thank goodness you're so considerate. Mother is really useless. Look at how flustered she is. She doesn't remember anything." Arbor smiled bitterly. A lifetime of suffering in exchange for thoughtfulness. Sister, what exactly are those monsters? How can they be so scary? Xiao Hu curled his small body up next to Wei Ziqin and picked up a dry cloth to wipe his face and body. Just now, when the monster stepped down from the roof of the car, his heart almost stopped beating. He was still in a state of shock. Brother Xiao Hu, those things are called corpse puppets. Arbor did not hide it from them. Mother, you're right. They're all corpses. They mutated from the corpses that were buried within half a month. These things move very slowly, but their strength is shocking. You can't kill them just by hitting their limbs, body, or even heart. You have to hit their heads first. Oh, sister. I know. That's why you shot his head with the crossbow and killed him. Xiao Hu nodded in realization. Yes. Chapter 108. These zombies are still only level 1 zombies. As long as you don't get surrounded by a large number of them, you can quickly escape. Xiao Mu explained calmly. They have boundless strength and will strangle people to death when they catch them. People who are strangled to death by level 1 zombies have a high chance of mutating into zombies, Arbor explained softly. But even if they only have 1 breath left, they won't mutate. These lowest level zombies don't actually have much killing power, but they can gather and attack in groups, so it's best to avoid them. Wei Ziqin and Xiao Hu nodded as they listened. At this time, the carriage had already reached the village entrance and left a large number of villagers far behind. Seeing that they were about to leave the village, 2 voices suddenly rushed out from the side, crying out in surprise and joy. Eldest brother, second brother, hurry and save mother. Eldest brother, second brother. Xiao Wenwan shrieked, almost crying tears of joy. At this time, Xiao Wenwan looked abnormally disheveled. Her hair was disheveled and her face was pale. Not only was there a deep red handprint on her neck, but her clothes were also completely soaked from the rain, as if she had rolled around in the rain a few times. Without waiting for Qiao Zhongxing to come back to his senses, Qiao Zhongbang immediately jumped off the horse, supported his mother and sister, and said anxiously, "Mother, little sister, hurry and get in the carriage. Let's go quickly." Okay. Old Madam nodded shakily, tears smearing her face. This was a calamity in her old age. If she hadn't been so angry at that damned girl Arbor that she couldn't sleep for half the night, and hurriedly got up and dragged her daughter away as soon as she heard the commotion, she probably would have died in the hands of those monsters. Xiao Wenwan also felt that she was extremely unlucky. She had lived comfortably for more than 10 years, and had never suffered like this. Now that the situation was urgent, she didn't need second brother's urging. She quickly helped her mother into the carriage with eldest brother and followed. As soon as she got into the carriage, Xiao Wenwan looked up at the hole in the roof and shrieked, "The roof of the carriage is broken. How can people still sit in it?" Arbor hugged Xiaolin, while Xiao Hu snuggled up to Wei Ziqin. The 4 of them sat in the carriage and occupied the best seats. Once the mother and daughter boarded the carriage, the originally small carriage became even more crowded. Only one person could sit at the door of the carriage, so the other person had to sit in the middle and forcibly get caught in the rain. The rain outside did not lessen in the slightest, and the water in the carriage was also pouring in. Sitting in the middle of the carriage was like sitting in the open air, with the wind howling and the rain falling. Just thinking about it made one feel miserable. Xiao Zhongbang looked embarrassed and snuck a peek at his eldest daughter's icy expression. How would he dare to ask them to give up their seats? Thus he urged, "Little sister, hurry and sit properly. We still have to hurry on our way. Xiao Wenwan was so angry that her face turned green. Seeing that her brother didn't let her sisters-in-law and the others move aside, she could only sit down angrily. The rain fell on her body, and she immediately felt the entire world's malice towards her. Arbor hugged Xiaolin and pulled the blanket tightly around her to block the wind. His gaze swept over this youngest aunt without any warmth, and he said faintly, "Please move your butt. Don't block the hole in the bottom of the carriage. After all, it's raining above, so the bottom has to leak as well. Otherwise, the carriage will soon have a river." When second uncle Qiao Zhongxing, who was holding the reins, heard this, his old face twitched. He felt that it was inappropriate for him to laugh out loud in this dangerous situation. "But Jojo, you're teasing us with that stoic face of yours. Are you sure you're not here to be funny? Don't worry, my friends. I'll update twice for now and wait for the big announcement." The author likes to update at night, and is considering whether to change the situation. Good night, Mwax. Chapter 109. Xiao Wenwan was so angry that her face was a little crooked. She pursed her lips and moved slightly to the side as she glared hatefully at Arbor. Compared to the mother and daughter's clean and refreshing appearances, she was so dirty and disheveled that she couldn't even bear to look straight at her. She had encountered a terrifying monster along the way that was strangling her neck and almost strangling her to death. Fortunately, her mother had held her breath and struck it from behind with a stick, allowing the mother and daughter to find an opportunity to escape hand in hand. Fortunately, although the monster was extremely strong, its movements were abnormally slow and stiff, allowing them to escape. Otherwise, they wouldn't be alive right now. Looking at Wei Ziqin and her daughters, other than their clothes being partially wet, their faces were clean and refreshed. They didn't appear to have stumbled at all. Especially that child Xiaolin, who was still sleeping soundly. Xiao Wenwan didn't know what to say. The outside world was turned upside down and everyone was exhausted from running for their lives. Yet this child could still sleep so soundly. There was really no one else like her. Xiao Zhongbang once again mounted the yellow-maned horse. Xiao Zhongxing also shook the reins and agilely urged the horse carriage forward. Arbor glanced back through the hollowed-out partition at the back of the carriage and saw Aoyi leading Xiao Yao over on horseback. She hadn't been able to close her eyes after being tossed and turned for the better part of the night. At this moment, she felt a little sleepy, so Arbor simply leaned against the wall of the carriage and closed her eyes to take a nap. Xiao Wenwan furtively peeked at Xiao Mu and instantly felt that this girl was quite careless. She could still sleep at a time like this. She was so nervous that she was about to die, and her palms were still sweating coldly. Elderly Lady Qiao was old, and was already exhausted from being tossed around for half a day. She listlessly leaned against the carriage door after boarding, and didn't have the energy to say anything. For a moment, the carriage was silent. Only a clatter could be heard occasionally as second uncle whipped the horse to urge it to gallop. Through the heavy rain, a carriage carrying 6 people of all ages safely left the village and rushed in the direction of Shijiao City. On the other side, the Crown Prince and the others were galloping. At dawn, Missouri Lian's group arrived at the north gate of Guanlan City. The commoners, who had come early in the morning to line up and quietly waited to enter the city to do business, hurriedly moved to the sides when they heard the sound of horse hooves. Many pairs of eyes curiously turned towards the direction from which the caravan had come, wanting to see which caravan was so early. They couldn't help but be stunned by what they saw. The handsome young man riding his horse was wearing a white robe that fluttered in the wind. His black hair was loosely tied up with a light golden ribbon that hung down to his waist. His phoenix-like eyes roamed about, like the radiance of the stars that filled the sky. It was as if a god had descended into the mortal world, noble and beautiful. What a charming and handsome young man. Yu Xiu followed closely behind, patting his horse to catch up. At the first moment he raised the golden token in his hand, his tone solemn and high. His Highness the Crown Prince has returned to the capital. Quickly open the city gates to welcome him. The 2 lowly soldiers on the city gate tower had already seen the appearance of the person who had come and immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Who would have thought that this great master would return to the city so early today? In their haste, they almost rolled down the city gate tower. In a panic, They called out in unison. Welcome back to the capital, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Welcome, Your Highness. Hurry, hurry. Quickly open the city gates. Hurry. Urgent voices were transmitted from the city gate tower to various parts of the city. Immediately, the city guards pulled the heavy iron chain capstan. With the combined strength of a dozen people, they pushed the city gates open inch by inch with great difficulty. Prince Mo turned his head and glanced indifferently at Yu Xiu. Then he rode into the city without a word. Behind him, aside from Yu Xiu, the group of youths followed the crown prince into the imperial city noisily. Chapter 110. Yu Xiu spurred his horse towards a nearby city guard. You come here. The captain of the city guard was drenched in cold sweat as he fearfully stepped forward. This was the captain of the Dragon Saliva Guard, a true blue third-rank official, and favored by His Highness the Crown Prince. How could he dare slight him? He immediately bowed respectfully and humbly lowered his head. What are your orders, my lord? Pass on His Highness' orders. From now on, everyone entering and leaving the city must be strictly interrogated. If anyone is found with a pale face, bulging eyes, stiff limbs, or slow movements, arrest them first. The captain hurriedly nodded like he was pounding garlic. Yes, yes, yes. Everything will be as my lord says. This lowly official will give the order to strictly investigate and guard the place to ensure that no slip-ups occur. Yu Xiu nodded and immediately turned to enter the city. He still needed to hurry back to the Dragon Saliva Guard and deploy more people to search the city to ensure the peace of the capital. The Crown Prince had said that this might not be a special case. They still didn't know what that mutated monster was and needed to investigate further. On the second floor of a jewelry store near the northern city gate, a brothel leaned against the window. A young man in embroidered robes leaned against the window and lightly pressed down on the folding fan in his hand. He suddenly laughed and said, My sixth brother has made such a big move as soon as he returned to the capital. Go investigate what the captain of the Dragon Saliva Guard is busy with. Master, His Highness the Second Prince was on the second floor of Rui Pavilion just now. Mo Lian had rushed to the imperial palace as soon as she entered the city. Hearing this, she only tilted her head slightly and raised her brows nonchalantly. Let him be. It was just a clown. He didn't have the heart to care about anything else. The group quickly rushed to the central palace's bedchamber. At this time, Queen Zhao, who symbolized the center of power in Mo Kingdom's harem, was about 30 years old. Her appearance was dignified and elegant. She was only wearing a watery red floral undergarment, and her hair was tied up in a loose bun. She was leaning against the couch listlessly. A shrewd old nanny dressed in a floral robe quickly walked in and curtsied towards Queen Zhao. Your Highness, news came from Sephora Flower Palace saying. She took 2 steps forward and whispered to Queen Zhao. That person caused another ruckus this morning and secretly executed a little maid. Pfft, Queen Zhao sneered. What is it this time? There was a hint of a smile in the old nanny's eyes. It was said that when that girl was helping that person with her makeup, she picked out a strand of white hair. Queen Zhao immediately laughed, but her eyes were filled with coldness. What a pretentious woman. How did the others react? The old mama pursed her lips and smiled. Every palace has different reactions, but Imperial Concubine Lin is the most interesting. She sent someone to deliver a box of hair oil to that person. She said, ahem, it was concocted by a famous doctor to treat white hair and baldness. Queen Zhao could already imagine the expression on that person's face when he received this gift. Your Highness, Your Highness. Her personal chief palace maid, He Xiang, quickly walked in with a joyful expression. She hurriedly bowed and said, Nyang Nyang, this servant just heard that His Highness the Crown Prince and his party have already returned to the capital. What? Queen Zhao immediately became spirited. Her eyes filled with a gentle light. She cheerfully stood up. Quickly help this queen dress. My son has returned, so I want to personally welcome him. The accompanying palace maids and nannies came forward to serve her with smiles. Just as they were busying themselves, they heard a report from outside that Prince Mo had come to the central palace to pay his respects. This child had just returned, So he definitely hadn't rushed back to the Eastern Palace to change his clothes and wash off the dust on his body before hurrying over to her. Thinking of how filial her son was, Queen Zhao's eyes were filled with smiles. She had long tossed the vexing matters of the other palaces to the highest heavens. Chapter 111. Emo Lien quickly entered, and immediately saw that her smiling mother was safe and sound. Her heart relaxed slightly, and she took a few steps forward, lifting her robe to kneel. "Mother Queen." "My son, quickly get up." Queen Zhao hastily went forward to personally help her up. "This child, look. You've been rushing about outside for so long, so you definitely haven't had a good rest. Your face has gotten thinner." Emo Lien helplessly glanced at her mother, then helped her sit down. "Mother Queen, did anything happen in the palace these past 2 days? Everything is fine here, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Please be at ease." Queen Zhao's personal nanny handed over a cup of tea with a smile, then retreated a few steps to stand behind the queen. "Mn. Mother is fine here." Queen Zhao smiled and said, "Child, you must be very tired after coming back. You should return to the Eastern Palace to rest first. We can talk again tomorrow, so there's no rush. Look at you, you have dark circles under your eyes. You've been traveling day and night, right?" As the mother and son were talking, a shrill cry came from outside the hall. Amidst hurried footsteps, a young eunuch with disheveled hair scrambled in from outside. As soon as he saw Queen Zhao, he repeatedly kowtowed and cried with snot and tears streaming down his face, "Save me, Your Highness." Queen Zhao's graceful and elegant face instantly darkened, and she reprimanded in displeasure. "Who are you? How dare you trespass into the central palace?" Without needing Queen Zhao's order, the patrolling guards who had received the news had already rushed in with sabers and spears. They surrounded the young eunuch who had barged into Queen Zhao's bedchamber without permission, scaring that unlucky fellow into trembling all over. "Spare me, Your Highness, spare me." The young eunuch repeatedly kowtowed. "Your Highness, this is Consort Zheng's servant, Shunzi." The old nanny behind Queen Zhao moved to her master's side and whispered. Queen Zhao was even more displeased when she heard this. She was just talking to her son, so where did this mad dog come from and make a scene as soon as it came in? It really made her lose her appetite. "Xiao Enzi, why aren't you serving your master at Sephora Flower Palace? What are you yelling here for?" "Your Highness, Your Highness." Xiao Enzi kowtowed like he was pounding garlic as he wept bitterly. A little palace made in Sephora Flower Palace suddenly mutated. She had boundless strength and strangled everyone she saw. She strangled 2 or 3 palace maids and eunuchs to death in succession. Furthermore, those who were strangled to death also mutated into her appearance, and continued to harm others in Sephora Flower Palace. The guards passing by were almost unable to restrain them. This lowly one risked his life to rush out and beg Your Highness to save his life. Emo Lien was slightly shocked. She raised her eyebrows and asked straightforwardly, "That little palace maid from before was a corpse mutation, right?" In this palace, it was normal for a few eunuchs and palace maids to die every day. This was especially true for that person from Sephora Flower Palace. Relying on her father's favor, she was usually very arrogant. If the palace maids and eunuchs by her side did anything that didn't go her way, it was very common for her to beat or kill them. Xiao Enzi was startled when he heard this. He kept his head down and didn't utter a word. Queen Zhao's gaze hardened. She slapped the sandalwood table hard and angrily said, "Did you not understand the Crown Prince's question?" Xiao Enzi couldn't stand being frightened at all, and confessed in a few words. The mutated little palace maid was the grooming maid who had been beaten to death by Consort Zheng early this morning. She had originally planned to drag her out and bury her in a mass grave at noon, but she hadn't expected such an unforeseen event to occur. "Huifeng," the Crown Prince called out softly. A black-clothed youth with sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes immediately appeared beside the Crown Prince and bowed in greeting. "Your Highness. Quickly bring 20 dragon saliva guards to Sephora Flower Palace to deal with this matter. You must not allow this matter to spread," the Crown Prince instructed coldly. He had a bad premonition that this unforeseen event would spread sooner or later. Chapter 112. The situation was more serious than she had imagined, so Mo Lian didn't plan to hide it from her mother. She told her everything that had happened on the way back. Queen Zhao's face paled when she heard how dangerous it was for the crown prince to return to the city. She grabbed the crown prince's hand and asked, "Are you hurt?" "Mother, don't worry. Your son isn't hurt," Prince Mo comforted. "As for the source of this matter, I've already ordered Yu Xiu to investigate. However, from the looks of it now, it should be related to the mutation of the undead. As a result, the city will need to be under martial law for several days and carefully search. The focus will be on the houses that have recently conducted funerals." Queen Zhao nodded repeatedly. "Mother, I'm afraid Guanlan City will be in chaos for a while. You and 12th brother should stay in the palace for the time being. Don't go out in the near future. Mother knows." Queen Zhao frowned and said softly, "But you should be more careful when you leave the palace often." Mo Lian nodded and said a few more words to her mother. She then hurriedly bid farewell and headed in the direction of the imperial study. Since something like this had happened, she naturally had to report it to the great king. Otherwise, she would become the subject of ridicule. Mo Lian's pace was neither fast nor slow as he slowly walked on the quiet and secluded path filled with osmanthus flowers that were as white as snow. He had a premonition that this zombie transformation disaster had probably just begun. Asterisk 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 my Prince Su's section break asterisk 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 the rain had stopped, but the ground was a bit wet. Da-da-da. Only one horse and one carriage passed by on the empty street. The bustling streets of Anshan town were now empty. The stalls that had been set up on both sides of the street had all disappeared. The doors of the grain and bun shops had been smashed, and the inside had been turned into a mess. It was too horrible to look at. Qiao Zhongxing sighed softly and pulled on the reins to stop the carriage. He turned his head to look inside the carriage. "Jojo, we've arrived at Anshan town." Arbor was in a daze from his sleep. When he heard his second uncle's call, he opened his tired eyes. He had only closed his eyes in the latter half of the night yesterday. He hadn't slept for more than 4 hours. The little foodie also woke up, but she had a full sleep. When she opened her eyes, she was full of energy and called out to her sister. Arbor was speechless. He simply put the little fellow in his mother's arms and put on his clothes. Then he lifted the curtain of the carriage and jumped down. "Second uncle, let's rest here for a while." Second uncle had been on the road all night, so she had to let him rest for a while. Mississippi. Arbor turned his head and saw Xiao Yao running over with a small package in her arms. "There are steamed buns and water. Have some." "All right." Arbor nodded and looked behind her. He didn't see stay up late, so he knew he was hiding somewhere. "Second uncle, have a steamed bun." They came just in time. Qiao Zhongxing happened to be starving. Hearing this, he hurriedly reached out to take the 2 steamed buns and a bag of water. After Xiao Yao gave the food to Qiao Zhongbang, who was looking at her eagerly, she went back to the car to distribute the food. But soon, a discordant voice broke the happy meal. "You're going to let me eat this?" An octave higher voice came from the carriage. Eldest Miss Qiao, Qiao Wenwan, who had been holding in her anger all the way, finally exploded. "Pa." She reached out and slapped the steamed bun from the old lady's hand. The bag of water spilled onto the old lady's hand. "Mother, how can I eat this kind of coarse and low-grade food? I might even get a stomachache." Qiao Wenwan didn't care how much blood was dripping from her mother's heart. She completely ignored her mother's longing gaze as she stared at the steamed bun on the ground. I won't. This was made by Xiao Yao last night. It's very clean. I won't get a stomachache." Chapter 113. Do you think I won't eat just because you said so? Such coarse food looks disgusting just by looking at it. Qiao Wenwan said with a look of disgust. Qiao Zhongxing, who was eating the steamed bun in big bites, choked slightly and lowered his head to look at the half-eaten steamed bun in his hand. "No, it's quite delicious. It's smooth and delicate. It's not bad." "Second brother, you're always like this. You can't be a person without any goals." Qiao Wenwan rolled her eyes at the foolish Qiao Zhongxing, then reached out to support the trembling elderly Lady Qiao. Mother, don't eat such coarse food. Let's get off the carriage. I remember that there's a restaurant in Anshan town with delicious food. Let's eat there. Xiao Zhongbang couldn't help but say, younger sister, we still have to hurry. Just make do with a few bites first. When we reach Shizhou City, well, how can that be? Mother, let's go over there. I remember that restaurant is just around the corner. Arbor looked at this naive aunt in disbelief. She used to think that this woman was a little stupid, but now it seemed that she wasn't stupid but mentally retarded. Everyone in Anshan town had scattered like birds and beasts, so where was she going to find a restaurant chef to cook for them? Arbor raised her hand to stop Xiao Yao's persuasion. Let her be. Xiao Yao, stay in the carriage and help me look after mother and younger sister. As for those two women, you don't have to worry about them. Yes, young Mississippi. Xiao Yao nodded. Arbor turned around and said to second uncle, Second uncle, you rest here for a while. I'll go take a look across the street. Qiao Zhongxing chuckled and nodded. When Arbor walked past Qiao Zhongbang, she heard her father whisper, Jojo, be careful. Come back quickly. Oh, Arbor replied indifferently and ran across the street. Qiao Zhongbang, on the other hand, was stunned for a while. Suddenly he said excitedly, Zhongxing, did you hear Jojo say just now? She's talking to me. Recently, Jojo had been treating him like he was invisible. He didn't even look at him, let alone acknowledge him. Just thinking about it made his heart ache. Qiao Zhongxing glanced at him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Boss, how can there be any overnight feud between father and daughter? Don't worry, Jojo is very sensible. She's extraordinarily intelligent and knows a lot of things. Xiao Yao, do you still have steamed buns? Qiao Zhongxing called out to the carriage. Yes, there's a lot. Xiao Yao stuffed another steamed bun into Qiao Hu's hand before jumping out of the car and running towards Qiao Zhongxing and Xiao Qiao. Arbor ran all the way to the door of the opposite shop. He used the tip of his foot to rub the signboard that had fallen to the ground. Sure enough, it was a talisman shop. He kicked open the half-broken door in front of him and crawled in like a cat. The inside of the shop had long been rummaged through. Occasionally, a few talismans would fall to the ground. Arbor picked them up and looked at them. They didn't have any talisman power attached to them. He couldn't help but feel disappointed. Without talisman power, talismans couldn't be made. It seemed like this little shop was just hanging sheep's head to sell dog's meat, selling fake talismans to fool the world. What a waste of blank talisman paper. Arbor walked around the shop but didn't find anything. When he turned around, his gaze suddenly fixed on the bookshelf that had fallen to the ground. After the bookshelf fell, all the books fell to the ground in a mess. Only one book remained firmly on the shelf, not moving at all. No one would believe that it wasn't a trap. Arbor stepped forward and kicked the book. There was a soft sound behind him, and the wall opened to one side. Accompanied by a suppressed roar, a zombie suddenly darted out from behind the wall and pounced towards Arbor. Chapter 114. Arbor was standing not far from the bookshelf, so when the zombie scurried out, the two were only 3 steps away from each other. Roar! It opened its mouth to reveal fangs, and its entire face was distorted. Even though Qiao Tong was skilled and bold, she couldn't help but jump in fright when this zombie abruptly jumped out in front of her. Looking at this magnificent beauty, up close truly made one's scalp tingle. Arbor reflexively summoned her ferrule, and with a thunderous strike, she directly smashed it on the zombie's head. Fangs had already grown out of this zombie's mouth, but its movements were still slow. Arbor's ferrule immediately smashed the zombie's head into mush. She pursed her lips and muttered to herself, "It's starting to mutate with fangs so soon." Fangs were the symbol of level 2 zombies. Not only did the zombie outbreak this time come early, but the mutation speed was also very shocking. In her previous life, some zombies only mutated to level 2 after at least 7 days of the outbreak. This time, the mutation truly caught people unprepared. Bypassing the completely dead zombie, Arbor walked into the secret room behind the moving wall. This was probably a storage room, and there were 2 zombies hiding in the corner. The 2 female zombies, whose original appearances couldn't be seen, pounced over. With bulging eyes, They charged at her from the front and back with malevolent expressions. Against a level 4 mystic cultivator, these 2 zombies were clearly not enough. After Arbor quickly dealt with them, she felt a bit disappointed and downcast. This should be the talisman shop owner's family of 3. After the zombie outbreak, the shop owner probably moved his wife and daughter into the secret room to take refuge. But one of the 3 must have been seriously injured and died not long after. After that, something heart-wrenching happened. The one who died lost her mind after the zombie transformation, and personally killed the other 2 closest relatives. The originally happy family of 3 was completely broken up just like that. Arbor thought of her father, and the resentment and anger in her heart had already dissipated the moment she saw the zombie barge into her parents' dormitory to commit murder. Any resentment could vanish in the face of disaster and family. Compared to the miserable state of the talisman shop owner's family, Arbor truly felt that there was nothing better than having a whole family together. Speaking of which, her father was essentially kind. In the face of death, he would not hesitate to push her mother away. It was just that sometimes he was too stupidly filial. He probably wouldn't be able to change it in this lifetime. Arbor walked around the storeroom and found 10 bags of rice and hundreds of fake talismans without talisman power. Naturally, she threw away the fake talismans and threw the rice into the paradise. Just as she was about to leave, the tip of her foot kicked a pitch-black wooden box. Arbor bent down to pick it up and opened it. His eyes lit up. Lying in the wooden box was an ordinary-looking jade tablet with the thickness of 3 fingers, and about 300 blank talisman papers. She had worn out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. With these 300 blank talisman papers, she wouldn't have to worry about drawing more storage talismans. Arbor flipped the jade tablet over and over in her hand. She couldn't see anything special about it, so she simply threw it back into the box and threw it into the paradise together with the rice. After putting away the heart of paradise, Arbor stepped out of the talisman shop. The rain had stopped, and there was a trace of moisture in the air. Arbor turned around and looked at the family of 3, who made her sigh endlessly. She thought to herself, I hope that in the next life, your family will be able to be together, safe and happy. Help, help! Xiao Wenjuan's panic scream came from around the corner. Arbor looked over in annoyance. She saw Xiao Wenjuan rushing at the front, while the old lady stumbled and ran behind her. Behind them, there were more than 10 ferocious-looking zombies in hot pursuit. Arbor's eyes twitched. She found it funny. The mother and daughter of the Qiao family are here. Chapter 115. Looks like we didn't get to eat this meal. Arbor crossed his arms and slowly paced to his father's side, his tone carrying a hint of ridicule. Xiao Zhongbang didn't know what to say. He paced in a circle and casually grabbed a wooden stick from the side of the street, about to step forward alone to save the mother and daughter. Xiaomu rolled her eyes and sent a look to second uncle beside her. Second uncle hastily raised his arm to block Father Qiao's path. Eldest brother, stay here. I'll go save them. Xiao Zhongbang's hand that gripped the wooden stick stiffened and turned white for a moment. Only then did he recall that he was no longer the high-spirited genius mystic cultivator youth from back then. Right now he was nothing more than a cripple. Charging into a zombie horde was courting death. Xiao Zhongxing had already reached the 3rd layer of body tempering, so dealing with these level 1 zombies was as easy as flipping his hand and finishing them off with one punch. Before long, he brought the disheveled mother and daughter back to the side of the carriage. At this time, elderly lady was already so frightened that her hands and feet were trembling, and she almost couldn't breathe properly. The mother and daughter's clothes, which had become wrinkled after a night of fleeing, were now even dirtier and more tattered. Their outer garments were clinging to their bodies by the zombies. Wei Ziqin walked down from the carriage and fetched some water for elderly lady to drink to calm her nerves. On the side, Qiao Wenwan rudely snatched the water sack from Wei Ziqin's hands and gulped down several large mouthfuls, unable to conceal the horror in her eyes. What exactly are those things? Why are there also these monsters in Anshan town? Qiao Wenwan drank a few mouthfuls of water to calm herself down before starting to shriek. These things are zombies that mutated from corpses. Who told you that there are no zombies in Anshan town? Xiao Zhongxing grumpily said. Eldest brother already told you to stay behind, but you insisted on bringing mother to some restaurant. Oh. In other words, you all knew. Xiao Wenjuan's face contorted as she pointed at everyone and screamed at the top of her lungs. You knew there was danger, but you didn't tell us? You even watched as mother and I foolishly went to a restaurant. If you had told us earlier, we wouldn't have taken the risk. Xiao Zhongxing was so angry that he was amused. He wasn't good with words in the first place, so he was rendered speechless by Xiao Wenjuan's screams. Arbor stood to the side and glanced at his aunt who had flipped out. You were the one who wanted to go to the restaurant to eat, and you didn't listen to others. Instead, you hurriedly supported grandmother and left. Did you care about what others said? Shut up. Xiao Wenwan was exasperated. How dare you interrupt when adults are talking? There were no rules. That's what sister-in-law taught you. Wei Ziqin was so angry that her face turned pale. She grabbed Arbor's hand and said, Let's get in the car. Steamed buns? Where are the steamed buns from before? Hurry up and give them to us. Xiao Wenwan felt like she was about to starve to death. She turned her head and roared at the young maidservant, who was standing at the side in a daze. Her arrogant attitude and matter-of-fact tone made it seem like she didn't realize how much trouble her foolish behavior had caused. Arbor's face instantly turned cold. He reached out to stop the young maidservant from subconsciously walking forward. His tone was bone-chilling. Do you think that this is still the peaceful era? That you're still the Qiao family's eldest miss who lived like a princess and didn't know the daily necessities of life? If you want food, you have to exchange it with equal labor. From today onward, this is my Arbor's rule. If you don't want to follow it, that's fine too. Arbor calmly looked at Xiao Wenwan, whose mouth was agape and didn't know how to react. Just get out of here. Chapter 116. What did you say? Xiao Wenjuan's eyes widened. She was so angry that her whole body trembled and her face turned purple. After a while, Xiao Wenjuan's lips trembled as she turned to look at Xiao Zhongbang, who was standing awkwardly on the side. Big brother, this is how your child treats me. I'm her aunt. She looked so wrong that she was about to cry. She was a completely different person from her earlier arrogant self. If you're so good at changing your face, why don't you just go to an opera troupe and sing? Xiao Mu beckoned at the little lass Xiaoyao, and the latter immediately followed after her eagerly. Son, mother can't live anymore. Old Lady Qiao was really crying this time. When those zombies chased after her, Old Lady Qiao felt that she would have been strangled to death if she had been one step slower. Not only had she not eaten anything since last night, but she had also been frightened and had been blown by the wind in the open carriage for an entire night. Ever since Old Lady Qiao became a widow, she had never suffered like this before. How could she not be sorrowful? Old Lady Qiao slapped her thigh and wailed, tears rolling down her cheeks. Her heart was filled with bitterness and resentment. She even secretly scolded her own daughter. If she had eaten a nice steamed bun, she would have been fine. Why did she have to smash the steamed bun on the ground and look for a restaurant? Mother. Xiao Zhongbang looked at his mother's tired and hungry appearance and couldn't bear it. He secretly glanced at Arbor, who had a long face. Jojo, grandmother is old. She can't go hungry. Mother will help her into the carriage and let Xiao Yao give her 2 steamed buns to eat, okay? Wei Ziqin asked carefully. Okay. Arbor nodded and didn't object. To Qiao Mu, this was only a trivial matter, but the Qiao Zhongbang couple heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Arbor's eyes flashed and his heart warmed. He knew that his parents cared about him a lot. His parents were extremely filial people. It was absolutely impossible for them to abandon their mother and escape alone. As long as the old lady didn't make trouble for her. It wasn't like Qiao Mu couldn't afford to give her a mouthful of food. She also didn't want her parents to be caught between their daughter and mother over such a small matter. Although deep in his heart, Arbor still didn't have the slightest good impression of the old lady. He was willing to try to accept this harsh and ungrateful old lady for his parents. Good girl. Wei Ziqin said with a gentle smile. She stepped forward to support the old lady, who had stopped crying and looked embarrassed. Xiao Zhongbang also smiled and said, Okay, let's get in the car. We have to get on the road quickly. We can't delay any longer. That's right. Let's hurry up and eat and get ready for the journey. Once we leave Anshan town and head south, it will probably take us a day and a night to reach the next town. Second Uncle Qiao jumped down from the carriage and said with a smile, "All right, the carriage has been roughly repaired. Everyone make do with it. Let's go." This time, no one had any objections, and they squeezed into the carriage one by one. Xiao Wenwan was the first to grab the most comfortable seat at the back of the carriage. She didn't even care about her mother. Wei Ziqing glanced at her, but didn't say anything. After helping the old lady into her seat, she pulled her daughter to find a seat near the door. She then took out 2 steamed buns from the bag that Xiao Yao handed over, and handed them to the old lady. "Mother, eat some to fill your stomach first. We'll find a place to cook some hot soup pancakes for you at noon." The old lady nodded and reached out to take the steamed buns with a complicated expression. Xiao Wenwan hastily called out, "Mother, I'm also hungry. Hurry and give me one." The old lady's lips trembled, and she gave her daughter a steamed bun without another word. Xiao Wenwan took it and started munching on it in large bites. Outside the carriage, Second Uncle Qiao raised his horsewhip and shouted as he drove the carriage toward the town exit. Xiao Zhongbang followed behind on horseback. Chapter 117. 3 adults and 4 children were squeezed into the small carriage. Occasionally, they would be able to stretch their limbs, but most of the time, everyone consciously sat with their bodies curled up. Other than Xiao Wenwan, she occupied the back of the car and sat comfortably. From time to time, she would pull open the curtains and look out of the car window. She kept letting out joyful cries. "Look, we haven't seen any of those monsters on the way here. The hillside is covered in green grass and fragrant. I'm sure that Xiangyang town is fine up ahead." Elderly lady had been tormented by the journey and was already drowsy. She was awakened by Qiao Wenjuan's startled cries, and a trace of annoyance appeared on her face. No one paid attention to her in the carriage. Arbor was already speechless towards this extremely naive youngest aunt. It turned out that she wasn't fleeing from disaster, but was on an outing. Looking at her simple-minded, cheerful appearance, it simply made people speechless. Xiao Wenwan put down the curtain and looked at everyone. Her 2 curved eyebrows wrinkled, and she sniffed hard. "What's that smell?" "Youngest aunt, your body. It stinks." Xiao Lin who was curled up in Wei Ziqing's arms, scrunched up her little face and vigorously fanned her chubby little hand, answering Qiao Wenjuan's previous question very well. Arbor was secretly amused, but his expression didn't change as he looked at Xiao Wenwan, whose face had turned the color of pig liver. After all, it was already the 7th month, and the weather was a bit stuffy at noon. The previous rain didn't bring about a comfortable feeling, but it made people feel even hotter after the rain. The air in this carriage didn't circulate well, and there were so many people squeezed in. They didn't notice it before, but after sitting for a long time and feeling stuffy, the smell came out. Xiao Wenwan and elderly Lady Qiao had rolled in the rain before and were also visited by zombies, so the smell on their bodies definitely couldn't be any better. However, Xiao Lin's frank words were still quite funny. Xiao Mu secretly applauded her sister in her heart, and she sent Xiao Yao, who was beside her, a look. Xiao Yao immediately understood and nodded. "It's not raining now. This servant will roll up the curtain to ventilate the air." Ventilate. Ventilate. Wind. Xiao Wenwan gritted her teeth. Was she that smelly? He even needed these people to open the curtains for ventilation. Xiao Wenwan angrily threw down the curtain in her hand and curled up in a corner to sulk by herself. At least her noisy voice was missing. The carriage stopped at the bottom of the hill. Second Uncle Qiao jumped off the carriage and shouted, "Let's rest for a bit and let the horses eat some grass before continuing." "Second brother, you've worked hard." Wei Ziqing got off the carriage with a large cloth bag. "You guys take a rest first. I'll cook some simple noodles for everyone." Okay, I'll go get some branches to start a fire." Xiao Hu carried the foodie out of the car, and the children sat by the side, waiting to eat. The little foodie's eyes followed her mother around. Wei Ziqing carried the package and went to work. She took out a pot and several bowls from the package. Xiao Wenwan followed her and looked at Wei Ziqin in confusion. Sister-in-law, why did you make so many preparations when you left in such a hurry? You even brought pots and pans? Oh, that's right. I'm used to it. Wei Ziqin's hand paused as she gave a perfunctory reply. Then she turned and busied herself with making noodles. That's not it. Why didn't I see this package in the carriage earlier? Xiao Wenwan asked. Wei Ziqin didn't answer, and reached out to push away the figure in front of her. Younger aunt, move over a bit. Don't get scalded by the hot soup. She had cut the noodles into slices and placed them in the storage talisman in small packets beforehand. Now she just needed to use the package to take out a small packet from the talisman and directly cook it. Chapter 118. Soon several bowls of piping hot noodles were ready. Xiao Wenjuan's pupils constricted as she watched her sister-in-law freely finish cooking the noodles and sprinkle seasonings into each small bowl, according to her personal taste. There was definitely something strange about this woman. Putting aside the fact that she still had the time to clean up pots and pans while fleeing in the middle of the night, she actually carried seasonings like oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar with her. No matter how one looked at it, it was strange. Xiao Wenwan hesitantly sized up Wei Ziqin, but even if she racked her brains, she would never have thought that Wei Ziqin had a storage talisman on her. No one paid any attention to her questions. Everyone held their bowls and slurped down the noodles. Even elderly Lady Qiao's eyes revealed a trace of joy and gratitude. After being tormented for an entire day and night, they were suddenly able to hold a bowl of hot soup pancakes and eat it. How blissful was that? Xiao Wenwan swallowed a bowl of noodles without tasting the food. She pestered Xiao Wenwan and asked, Sister-in-law, just tell me. This package was clearly not in the carriage just now. You must be seeing things. The package has always been there. Wei Ziqin pretended to be surprised and swept a glance at Xiao Wenwan before quickly turning around to clean up the bowls and chopsticks. Wei Ziqin was very clear about what kind of person her younger sister-in-law was, so she naturally would not reveal the storage talisman to Xiao Wenwan. The storage talisman was a magic weapon that her daughter gave her. Every time she thought about it, Wei Ziqin felt sweet in her heart. Xiao Wenwan stomped her feet and walked unwillingly to elderly Lady Qiao's side. She grabbed her mother's sleeve and shook it. Mother, look at sister-in-law. She must be hiding something from us. Calm down. Right now, the most important thing is to quickly find a safe place to rest. Only now did old Lady Qiao realize that she had spoiled her daughter too much. Xiao Wenwan pursed her lips. When she saw that her mother did not help her reprimand her sister-in-law, she could only give in. However, she was rather angry in her heart, thinking that her sister-in-law definitely had a secret. Everyone rested for less than an hour. Because they were in a hurry to settle down in Shijiu City, they decided to get on the carriage and continue their journey. Arbor waited for everyone to get on the bus before he was ready to jump in. However, he heard a familiar chirping sound. At first, she thought she was hearing things, so she retracted her small foot and stuck her small head out to look at the back of the carriage. However, Xiao Mu's eyes suddenly turned round, and she quickly jumped into the carriage without another word. She pulled the curtain and yelled, "Second uncle, let's go quickly." Second Uncle Qiao panicked. Our dear Qiao Mu's anxious tone truly made Second Uncle Qiao misunderstand that a large group of zombies had caught up to them. Without another word, he didn't even have time to look back before he whipped his horse and hurriedly drove the carriage away. Xiao Zhongbang hurriedly followed on horseback. What's wrong? Another batch of zombies is coming? I don't know. Second Uncle Qiao drove the carriage with all his heart, and did his best to whip the horse. He felt that his back was drenched in cold sweat. Jojo said to leave quickly, so the situation must be bad. Chirp. When the little white squirrel saw that the carriage was moving quickly, and that the distance between it and its master seemed to be increasing, it hurriedly transformed into a ball of white light. Like a bolt of lightning, it scuttled across the hillside and dashed straight to the roof of the carriage. Arbor collapsed beside his mother, and patted his small chest with one hand. Holy sh*t, I think I saw that poisonous squirrel in the mystic realm just now. Chirp. A ball of white light fell from the roof of the carriage and directly pounced on Xiao Mu's face. Xiao Mu immediately gnawed on a mouthful of white fur. Her small nose was filled with the fur of a certain creature. She was so angry that her small face was suddenly covered in a layer of green paint. Friends, the author has successfully changed the update time to daytime. Moi moi, carrot carrot. Chapter 119. Scram. Arbor angrily rebuked and unceremoniously pulled the little squirrel off his face. Then, without even looking at the tears in the little guy's beady eyes, he swung his hand and flung a certain squirrel out of the car roof that had another hole in it. The people in the carriage, old and young, were all silent as they stared dumbfoundedly at little Qiao. Such a cute little fellow, you actually treat it like this? Qiao Wenwan shrieked. Squeak. The little white squirrel persevered, and suddenly broke through the wall of the carriage. However, half of its chubby body was stuck in the carriage, while the other half was stuck outside. Its little furry head rested on Arbor's shoulder as it looked at its little master with teary eyes. The corner of Arbor's mouth twitched involuntarily. Arbor didn't know whether to laugh or be angry at its stupidity as it shook its round body and tried to pull itself out of the hole. Squeak. The little white squirrel revealed a human-like pitiful expression, begging for help. Arbor extended a thin finger and poked its chubby body. Squeak. Its little master didn't seem to like it very much. It was begging for comfort. I'll help you. Xiao Wenwan squeezed over from the corner of the carriage and chuckled as she lifted her hand to pick up the little white squirrel. Squeak. The originally cute little furry face suddenly turned ruthless and revealed a fierce gaze. Before Xiao Wenwan could react, it bit down hard on her outstretched hand. Xiao Wenwan fell down with a gurgle, and a layer of turmeric quickly spread across her face. Old Madam jumped in fright and rushed forward to check on her daughter. She turned her head and angrily shouted at Arbor. What did you do to your little aunt? Arbor pulled the little white squirrel out of the hole in the carriage wall, and expressionlessly looked at Old Madam. I bit her. Old Madam Qiao immediately choked. How long will she lie down? Arbor could tell that the white squirrel's bite this time was slightly different from before. Previously, in the mystic realm, those who were bitten by it had all died on the spot. This time, Xiao Wenwan just lay there motionless, but her eyes were still moving, but her face was full of fear, as if she would faint at any time. Creak. Arbor stretched out one finger after another. When he reached the third finger, he asked, 3 hours? The little white squirrel nodded repeatedly with an adorable expression. Arbor was satisfied. He nodded and said, we can have peace until the night. Without Xiao Wenjuan's nagging, this was pretty good. You can leave now. Knowing that the little white squirrel could understand its words, Arbor put its round body down and poked it with its little hand. Squeak. The little white squirrel hurriedly pounced onto Arbor's body, rolling on the ground and begging for shelter. I can't protect too many people, Arbor said calmly. Squeak. The little white squirrel immediately jumped up and shook its short limbs, energetically performing a set of punches and kicks. It indicated that it was very strong and didn't need protection. Moreover, it could protect others. Its silly look made Wei Ziqin and the others want to laugh. Big sister, it's so fun. Jolin suddenly stretched out her little paw to touch it, giving Wei Ziqin a fright. Arbor glanced at the little white squirrel, whose eyes were glowing fiercely again. Don't bite. The little white squirrel shrunk its tail and pathetically stopped moving. Jolin hugged its round little body and exclaimed happily, Sister, it's so fun. It's fun. Arbor shook his head helplessly. Suddenly he thought of something, and his brows twitched slightly. Chapter 120. Old Madam suddenly shouted. Arbor, why aren't you saving your little aunt? Whoever bites her will save her. Arbor's words rendered Old Madam speechless. At this time, Qiao Zhongxing also discovered that no zombies had chased after them. Second Uncle Qiao, who was covered in cold sweat, helplessly looked at the child who jumped out of the car. This little scoundrel, can't he speak clearly? This problem of speaking lazily needs to be cured. Second uncle, wait for me. Xiaomu walked a bit further away with the little white squirrel in her arms before squatting down and poking its chubby body. Can you enter the paradise? Seeing the white squirrel, she recalled that all living creatures, including herself, couldn't enter the paradise, but there were fish in the paradise's small lake. This meant that it wasn't true that the paradise didn't contain living creatures, but that it didn't accept living creatures from the outside. However, the little white squirrel truly belonged to the paradise, although it was a bit strange why it existed in the paradise in the first place. Squeak! Chirp! You're a squirrel, not a bird. Don't keep making nondescript bird sounds. Arbor poked it again. Can you mine magnetite? Can you extract magnetite from the mine? The little girl didn't feel guilty when she said this. One had to know that extracting magnetite from ores was a technical job. Many artificers worked day and night to extract the magnetite. Furthermore, the amount of magnetite extracted was pitifully small. It was unknown how much magnetite was lost in the process. This little guy was actually nagging at a white squirrel. And the strange thing was that the white squirrel even reacted by nodding furiously. Master, master, I'm useful. This was the meaning in the adorable black beady eyes. Stay up late. Little master, don't worry. No mystic cultivators are passing by. Stay up late, said the moment he appeared. Arbor nodded and discussed with the wilted sapling. He sighed and took out the heart of paradise. A white light flashed. As expected, the little white squirrel entered the translucent valley without any hindrance. Arbor's eyes flickered as he watched the little white squirrel scurry into the magnetite mine at an extremely fast speed. The little white figure disappeared in a flash. Arbor thought that it would take some effort for this little thing to come out. After all, it was such a big mountain. It would take some time for her to go in and mine a piece of magnetite. Unexpectedly, just as he was about to put away the heart of paradise, the white figure suddenly appeared in a flash. The little white squirrel was holding a spherical ore in its two short claws. Chirp, chirp, chirp. The little white squirrel sat in Arbor's arms and extended its two tiny claws to peel off the outer layer of the ore. He was really peeling it like peeling a banana. Arbor wasn't the only one who was dumbfounded. Stay up late, who was watching from the side, was speechless. When did the outer skin of the magnetite mine become as soft as a banana peel? Didn't they have to rely on the craftsman to slowly chisel it with tools? Soon a pitch-black, almost transparent stone with a hint of emerald color faintly visible at its core appeared in Xiaomu's palm. This piece of black stone was actually so bright and black, and there was even a bit of jade floating in it. He had never seen it before. Arbor held it in his hands and looked at it over and over again. Stay up late, who was standing on the side, was so excited that he could barely speak properly. Yes, it's a high-grade magnetite. Little master. A high-grade magnetite? And it was such a big piece, about the size of 2.5 adults' palms. According to the size of magnetite sold in normal magnetite stores, this piece of magnetite could be cut into at least 10 pieces of high-grade magnetite. Of course, it was guaranteed that each piece would be sold at a sky-high price. Even Stay Up Late, who had seen a lot in Guanlan City, was so excited when he saw such a large piece of high-grade magnetite that he almost couldn't speak properly. It was obvious how rare this item was. Chapter 121. It turned out to be a piece of high-quality magnetite. She didn't expect this little white squirrel to be so good at doing things despite its adorable appearance. Chirp. The adorable little white squirrel kept rolling around in Arbor's arms as it faced the sky, revealing its round belly. Not bad. Arbor praised it expressionlessly with a blank face. Beside her, Aoyi glanced at his little master speechlessly. He should be very happy, but his little master's face was still stoic. It made him feel like his heart was about to break down. Arbor reached out to scratch the little white squirrel's chubby belly. The white squirrel comfortably lay in her arms, chirping from time to time. Now it could feel that its little master was in a very good mood. It seemed that it had done a good job of gaining her favor. I'll call you Chirp from now on. Arbor reached out and stroked the little white squirrel's smooth fur. Help me mine more low-grade magnetite ores in the next 2 days. Arbor shook the high-grade magnetite in her arms and poked the little fat squirrel's belly. Not this kind of high-grade magnetite. I want low-grade magnetite. Do you understand? The little white squirrel nodded cutely. Its pair of black beady eyes were bright and sparkling, filled with gratitude and surprise. Little Master had finally accepted it. It was so happy. Little Master would never kick it into the sky again. It was also a white squirrel that had contributed to Little Master's efforts. However, the little white squirrel frowned its furry face in distress. What was a low-grade magnetite? It nodded one moment, then shook its head the next. Arbor raised her brows slightly, and thought for a moment before poking the little fat squirrel's head. Don't tell me, the paradise doesn't have low-grade magnetite ores at all? She didn't know much about magnetite ores and didn't know how to differentiate their grades, but she had a guess when she saw the little fat squirrel's troubled expression. The little white squirrel nodded vigorously. Master was the master that understood it the most in the world. It felt so blissful to be connected to its master's heart. Chirp chirp. Arbor poked its furry little face with her finger to prevent it from nibbling on its fur again. Then you, help me pick 3 to 5 mid-grade profound stones. I don't need too many. Although she could also use mid-grade magnetite, with her current level 4 cultivation, she probably wouldn't be able to absorb too much. In fact, with her current situation, it was best to use low-grade magnetite to cultivate. Unfortunately, there wasn't even a single low-grade profound stone in the paradise. Yes, okay. The little white squirrel kept nodding its little head, indicating that it had completely understood its master's intentions. When Arbor saw a certain little fellow rolling around in his arms, he expressionlessly picked it up and casually tossed it into the paradise. Then he quickly put away the heart of paradise. In fact, she didn't like cute things. In her previous life, she had been raised as a cute thing. Every time she thought about it, she felt extremely disgusted and even wanted to vomit. At that time, it was true that she could no longer use her limbs normally, but even so, she did not want to live the life of being treated like a cute pet. Stay Up Late was confused when he saw the little guy's expression turn even colder. He always felt that the child's emotions changed very quickly. If he didn't pay attention, he would be hurt by the cold wind around her. This is for you. The child casually tossed the high-grade magnetite to Stay Up Late. The latter subconsciously reached out to catch it with a stunned expression. Little Master? The child probably didn't know the value of this high-grade magnetite. Chapter 122. Xiaomu swept him an indifferent glance before saying with a nod, "For you to use." "How can that be? This is a large piece of high-grade magnetite. If you put it up for auction, it's worth more than half a city. Keep it well and use it slowly." With that, Arbor walked back to the carriage without looking back. He didn't allow Stay Up Late to argue. Regardless of whether it was when he took the money and left without a word, or when he tossed the item away and left without a word of explanation, he was just as arrogant. Stay Up Late held the scalding high-grade magnetite in a daze. He looked at the child's back with gratitude before quickly disappearing. The child's heart was actually very soft. It was just that she had built a high wall of thorns and sharp stones around her heart. She wouldn't show it easily. Xiaomu cast a glance behind her before turning around, and continuing to walk back to the carriage with a smile. "Jojo's back," Xiao Zhongxing shouted. "Get in the carriage." Arbor nimbly jumped into the carriage. As soon as he got in, he met old Madame Qiao's inquisitive gaze. "Where's that squirrel?" Old Madame Qiao asked with a dark expression. "Hurry and let it save your little aunt." Arbor walked around old Madame Qiao and sat next to Xiao Yao. He didn't say anything and closed his eyes to rest. The carriage started moving again. The atmosphere in the carriage was rather stifling. Old Madame Qiao hugged the stiff and immobile Qiao Wenwan. She suppressed her anger and stole glances at Arbor, who was resting against the wall of the carriage. "Ziqin, look at Wanner. What should we do? That poisonous squirrel just now was clearly provoked by your family's Qiaomu. Yet it caused Wanner to suffer so much. This old woman can't control this child. As her mother, why aren't you saying anything?" Old Madame Qiao's heart ached for her daughter. Seeing that Arbor was ignoring her, She could only direct her anger at Wei Ziqin. Unexpectedly, Wei Ziqin turned a deaf ear to her. She kept her head down and hugged Jolin, patting her back and coaxing her to sleep. The old lady was so angry that she couldn't vent her anger. Seeing that no one in the carriage was paying attention to her, she could only shut her mouth resentfully. Until nightfall, the carriage did not encounter any more danger. They rested for the night in a grove on the way to Xiangyang town. Xiao Yao took Wei Ziqin's job of cooking noodles and drove her to the side to rest. This time there was more time. Xiao Yao specially took 4 eggs and stir-fried them. When they were slightly shaped, she poured in the prepared tomato slices and stir-fried them together. After putting the tomato and egg into a bowl, he made another pot of noodles. After everyone's bowls were filled with noodles, a bowl of steaming hot noodles was poured over them with the tomato and egg gravy. The group of people had been watching from the side for a long time. When the noodles were in their hands, they immediately ate without saying anything. Good. The little foodie immediately gave the highest evaluation. Arbor held the bowl and said faintly, "The cooking is good." Xiao Yao's little face immediately broke into a smile. The most miserable one was Qiao Wenwan, who couldn't move her limbs. She could only sit by the side and let her mother feed her. She ate with a sullen face. After eating and drinking to their fill, when everyone was preparing to sleep for the night, so that they could get up early tomorrow, Qiao Wenwan could move again. She suddenly sat up from the ground and angrily glared at Arbor. Seeing that the latter didn't respond, Qiao Wenwan got up and silently walked to the other side of the grove. "Wanner, where are you going so late?" Old Madam was a little panicked. "It's none of your business," Qiao Wenwan said angrily. Chapter 123. 1. Qiao Zhongxing roared furiously. "Come back here." It was the middle of the night, and this wasn't a safe place. How dare she go into the woods alone? Qiao Zhongxing was truly enraged by this brainless younger sister of his. Qiao Wenwan ignored second Uncle Qiao and scowled angrily into the depths of the woods, forgetting her mother's repeated calls for her to wanna to the back of her mind. Xiao Hu and Arbor looked at each other in dismay. Not only was their youngest aunt so naive that it gave them a headache, but she was also so willful that no medicine could save her. Frowning, Qiao Zhongbang told the children to go to sleep and said to Qiao Zhongxing, "Second brother, you go to sleep too. I'll keep watch tonight. Eldest brother, wake me up for the rest of the night." "No need. You must be tired after such a long journey. I can handle it. Go to sleep. We'll have to trouble you tomorrow." Qiao Zhongbang shooed his second brother to sleep, and spoke a few words with Wei Ziqin before shooing them all to rest. Occasionally, the chirping of birds could be heard from the woods. From time to time, Qiao Zhongbang turned to look in the direction Qiao Wenwan had left. As time passed, Qiao Zhongbang began to feel anxious when Qiao Wenwan still hadn't returned. This little sister of his was too insensible. Qiao Zhongbang couldn't help but curse inwardly. At the same time, he blamed his mother for spoiling his younger sister so much that she didn't know the ways of the world. In the dead of night, a thin crescent moon hung high in the dark sky. Wei Ziqin and her children were curled up on a simple mattress made of hay, fast asleep. This day and night was too torturous. Xiaomu was still a child after all, so her body would also feel tired after a long time. Thus, she had already fallen into a deep sleep. Qiao Zhongbang sat alone in the dark. Using the little bit of moonlight, he looked at the women and children with a gentle gaze. He secretly rejoiced that the whole family was safe and well together. When Qiao Wenwan still hadn't returned in the latter half of the night, Qiao Zhongbang wondered if his unreliable younger sister had fallen asleep somewhere in the forest. When the morning light shone and the morning clouds revealed only a trace of red, a horrifying scream broke through the depths of the forest and broke the tranquility. Immediately, a flock of frightened birds rushed to the top of the forest. Arbor sat up reflexively. There was coldness in the depths of his eyes. There was not the slightest confusion that he had when he first woke up. Her movements were a little big, and it immediately alerted Wei Ziqin, Xiao Hu, and the others who were beside her. However, the little foodie was still sleeping soundly. What made him even more speechless was that Peach was still tightly held in her arms. Second Uncle Qiao also woke up. He quickly stood up and looked around warily. Eldest brother, second brother, that's your little sister's cry. Let's hurry over and take a look. Old Madam cried out in alarm. Get in the car. Arbor picked up Xiaolin and stuffed her into her mother's arms. Hurry, let's go immediately. Xiao Zhongxing quickly jumped into the car, but Old Madam lunged over and grabbed his arm tightly. Old Madam cried in a tearful voice. Second brother, that's your biological little sister. How can you leave her in the lurch? Second uncle, let's go immediately. Xiao Mu yanked elderly lady off of second uncle's body and tossed her into the carriage in a huff. Seeing that elderly lady, Xiao was about to climb up and make a fuss again. Xiao Mu's gaze hardened, and an ominous glint landed on her. She faintly said, Grandmother, I actually don't mind throwing you down as well so that you and your good daughter can depend on each other. Old Madam shuddered. Looking at those dark eyes that were as calm as an ancient well, she felt a ghostly aura emanating from her body. Chapter 124. Everyone get in. Arbor stopped staring at the old lady and jumped into the car. He quickly opened the seat and took out a bag. Wei Ziqing carried Jolin and quickly got into the car, followed by Qiao Hu and Xiao Yao. Arbor opened the cloth bag and took out 2 small daggers. He gave one each to his mother, Wei Ziqing, and one to Qiao Hu. Wei Ziqing was a woman who had never held a sword in her life. At this moment, she was holding the dagger with both hands. Her whole body couldn't help but tremble slightly, but she still held the dagger tightly. Mom, don't be afraid. It's just for self-defense. You'll be fine. Arbor patted the back of her hand and took out a crossbow, throwing it to Xiao Yao. You know how to use it? Xiao Yao nodded immediately. Arbor took out a small bag of iron arrows and handed it to Xiao Yao. Stay in the car and protect them. Don't come out unless something happens. Yes, young master. Jojo, are there a lot of zombies coming? Wei Ziqing's voice trembled. Arbor nodded solemnly. About 100 or 200. If she was alone, she wouldn't care about 100 zombies. Even if she couldn't beat them, she could run away quickly. But now that she had a group of old, weak, women, and children with her, she had to be careful. Xiao Zhongxing knew the situation was urgent. He jumped into the car and whipped the horse to start running. Qiao Zhongbang mounted the horse and looked back. He saw smoke billowing in the forest not far away. Roars and Qiao Wenjuan's screams were getting closer. As the yellow mane horse galloped, Wei Ziqing looked out the back window with Jolin in her arms. She felt a chill run down her spine. Her Qiao's estimation was not wrong. With a glance, she indeed saw 100 to 200 corpses gathered in one place. Their bodies were stiff, and they were currently slowly chasing forward. Not far from the zombie horde, Qiao Wenwan was in a sorry state, rolling on the ground with her hands and feet. Perhaps it was because she was so scared that her legs were weak. She fell every 2 steps and rolled on the ground. Then she got up again and stumbled forward while screaming. When the Qiao family's carriage appeared in her line of sight, her dazed eyes finally focused. Just as she was about to let out a sigh of relief, she saw the carriage in her line of sight suddenly move. No. Qiao Wenwan let out a heart-wrenching scream. She stretched out a hand and looked in horror at the direction the carriage was leaving in. She suddenly staggered and fell to the ground with a bang. At this moment, the 2 corpse puppets closest to her stiffened their bodies and pounced on her. While Qiao Wenjuan's mind was in a daze, a strange power suddenly erupted from her body, and she used all her strength to shake off the 2 corpse puppets on her body. Ah! Don't come over here, don't come over here. Qiao Wenwan madly chased after the carriage. For the first time in 17 years, she realized that her speed could reach such an extreme level. Wei Ziqing was a bit dazed. She quickly tugged at Arbor's small hand. Jojo, quickly look. How is Wenwan so fast? Arbor glanced over, and her gaze flickered. She knew that after the zombie outbreak, a group of people with special abilities appeared outside of mystic cultivators. Arbor didn't know if Qiao Wenwan had this ability in her previous life, but now, it was clear that Qiao Wenwan had comprehended special speed at the juncture of life and death. However, in Arbor's opinion, special speed was a rather useless ability, because she could deal with speed with any talisman. When the zombies' speed caught up in the later stages, special people who only had speed without strength were not welcomed by operation teams. Chapter 125. The carriage didn't stop. Xiao Wenjuan's current mood could only be described as exploding. The grievance, resentment, and hatred in her heart had almost reached its peak and was about to overflow. These people really didn't wait for her? They were really so heartless as to directly throw her to the zombie horde without caring about her life or death. Speaking of which, if Arbor hadn't allowed her to be bitten by the poisonous squirrel and watched her suffer without interfering, would she have left the crowd in a fit of anger and gone into the depths of the forest alone? Xiao Zhongbang's guess was completely correct. After Qiao Wenwan left in a huff, she wandered around the forest for half a day and was a little tired. She sat down to rest for a while, but who knew that she would fall asleep in a daze? She was awoken by suffocation. When she opened her eyes, she saw an enlarged rotting face right in front of her eyes. She was so frightened that she almost fainted. She didn't know where the strength came from at that time, but she pushed away the zombie choking her neck. Then, she focused her eyes and saw over 100 slow-moving zombies surrounding her. When she ran back to where the carriage was parked, she didn't expect that what awaited her was her family members coldly turning around and leaving. Xiao Wenwan chased after the carriage like a madwoman. She never knew that there would be a day when her instantaneous burst of speed would be faster than a carriage. In the carriage, Wei Ziqin anxiously grabbed Arbor's small hand. "Jojo, she's catching up." "Don't worry." Arbor coldly glanced at the madly chasing Xiao Wenwan. What little patience she had left had been completely worn out by this woman. "Stay here," Arbor instructed and flipped out of the carriage. He squatted on the roof of the carriage and narrowed his eyes at the panting Xiao Wenwan. Xiao Wenwan tightly bit her cheeks, her face turning purple. When she was 3 or 4 steps away from the carriage, she suddenly threw herself forward without a care and hung onto Second Uncle Qiao's body. Caught off guard, Second Uncle Qiao was almost thrown off the carriage by the force of her charge. Fortunately, he held onto the reins and tried his best to control the horse while dealing with the crazy Xiao Wenwan. "Wenwan, what are you doing? Get into the carriage." Xiao Zhongbang urged his horse to follow beside the carriage. Seeing this, he anxiously shouted. Xiao Mu raised her wrist and released 2 arrows with a swish, shooting away the first 2 zombies who were stiffening their necks and running at the front. 1. The old lady's hands trembled as she tried to lift the curtain. Due to the bumpy ride of the carriage, the curtain was not lifted, but she was jolted backwards. Wei Ziqin reached out and nudged the old lady. "Mother, you'd better sit still and not move." "Go away," the old lady cried out in exasperation. "You bunch of heartless people. You abandoned my Wan, and ran off by yourself. Hurry up and help her in." Arbor suddenly jumped down from the roof and hit Xiao Wenjuan's back with his elbow. "Get out!" Xiao Wenwan hugged Xiao Zhongxing tightly and turned around to glare at Xiao Mu so fiercely that sparks were about to shoot out from her eyes. "You devoid of conscience, you wretched girl. You won't have a good death." Xiao Wenwan sternly screamed. Unexpectedly, when she looked back, the little girl's eyes were locked onto her like a reincarnation vortex. The ripples in her eyes were dark and eerie with an indescribable strangeness. "You're right. I've already had a bad death once. This time, I won't give anyone the same chance." Arbor kicked Xiao Wenjuan's head. Scram. Xiao Wenwan continued to scream. Seeing this, old lady Qiao panicked. She leaned half of her body out of the carriage and went forward to pull on Arbor's arm. Chapter 126. How could Arbor let old lady Qiao grab him? With a flick of his wrist, he used a bit of strength and immediately flung old lady Qiao into the carriage. The shaft of the carriage wasn't wide to begin with, and Xiao Wenwan was hanging onto Xiao Zhongxing's body from the side, not letting go. Her shoes were even dragging on the ground. If Arbor kicked her out of the carriage, Second Uncle Qiao would definitely be implicated. Because of Xiao Wenjuan's entanglement, it became very difficult for Xiao Zhongxing to drive the carriage. The carriage stumbled along the forest path, and its speed slowed down. Xiao Wenwan only felt a sharp pain in her head from Arbor's kick. She clung onto Qiao Zhongxing with both hands and screamed, "Second brother! Second brother! I'm your biological sister. Big brother, is this how you treat me? You abandoned me and ran away, and you think you're in the right? Stop screaming." Arbor grabbed the back of her neck and angrily said with a frosty expression, "You want to attract more and more zombies here. Big brother." Xiao Wenwan completely ignored Arbor. There was a sudden commotion in the carriage. Arbor turned around and saw a zombie fall out of the rear window after being shot by Xiao Yao. Damn it. After the carriage slowed down, some zombies had already caught up. Arbor was unable to restrain his anger as he grabbed the tattered clothes on the back of Qiao Wenjuan's neck. His voice seemed to spread out from ice and snow, carrying an endless chill. "If someone has to go down to feed the zombies, you're definitely the best choice." Qiao Wenwan shuddered. "One." Old Lady Qiao lifted the curtain and pounced out. She grabbed Qiao Wenjuan's arms with both hands and dragged her into the inner wall of the carriage. Qiao Wenwan hugged her mother and curled up in her mother's embrace as she trembled. "My Wana, you've suffered." Old Lady Qiao hugged her daughter and cried, unable to bear it. Her youngest daughter, who had been pampered since she was young, had never suffered like today's abuse. Without Qiao Wenjuan's entanglement, Qiao Zhongxing breathed a sigh of relief. He quickly shook the reins and sat upright, anxiously whipping the horse to hurry. At this moment, there were at least 30 to 40 zombies in front chasing after them. Arbor didn't have the time to waste with Old Lady Qiao and his daughter. She flipped onto the roof of the carriage and shot several arrows in succession, shooting the zombies clinging to the outer wall of the carriage. "Jojo, there's more in front." Qiao Zhongxing's pupils constricted as he looked at the hundreds of zombies that had appeared in front of the forest. Qiao Zhongxing's Qiaozizizis. "Father, abandon the carriages. Qiao's Qiaozis. He's and he's SSB. Zhongxing Xiao Yao hastily handed one over. "Master, this recoils isn't small. Be careful." Qiao Zhongbang nodded. After all, he was someone with a foundation, so it didn't take long for him to get used to the crossbow. Looking at the zombies peeking out of the side window, Qiao Zhongbang mustered his strength and shot an arrow. Then he felt his wrist go slightly numb. Qiao Zhongbang gritted his teeth and endured it. He turned to frown at the sobbing mother and daughter. "Mother, little sister, stop wailing. You'll attract even more zombies." Arbor gripped the crossbow tightly and took a deep breath. "Second uncle, charge over." The road ahead was blocked by over 100 zombies, and the pursuers behind them couldn't do anything. Second Uncle Qiao gritted his teeth, shook the reins and shouted, "Giddy up!" The carriage charged toward the zombie horde like an arrow released from a bow. Friends, we'll update 2 more chapters later to celebrate breaking the 10,000 mark. Chapter 127. Bam 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 Bam. Second Uncle Qiao couldn't help but secretly rejoice as he knocked over several zombies along the way. Fortunately, Jojo was considerate and made the carriage the most comfortable and durable type. Thus, this carriage was built to be sturdy and wouldn't immediately fall apart even if it was hit multiple times by more than 10 zombies at the same time. When the carriage charged into the zombie horde, several zombies immediately pounced on Second Uncle Qiao. Arbor shot several arrows in succession and directly blew up the zombies' heads. After entering close combat, Arbor tossed the crossbow in his hand back and lightly leaped onto the left axle of the carriage. A black ferrule appeared in the palm of his right hand and released the light of mystic energy. Without any explanation, he smashed the heads of several zombies that were clinging to the side of the carriage and kicked them down. From time to time, the screams of Old Lady Qiao and her daughter could be heard from the carriage. The little foodie finally woke up amidst these ear-piercing screams. She reached out to rub her eyes and looked at the window with a confused expression. Suddenly, a pair of stiff hands pierced through the window and a pair of deathly gray arms tightly wrapped around Qiao Wenjuan's neck. Old Lady Qiao let out a high-pitched scream. When Qiao Zhongbang saw this, he hurriedly smashed the zombie's arms with the crossbow in his hand. He smashed it several times, but the zombie didn't move an inch. On the other hand, Qiao Wenjuan's eyes were about to roll back from being strangled. "Waner." Whoosh! Xiao Yao protected Wei Ziqin and her daughter by her side, and shot an arrow at the zombie's forehead from across the carriage, rescuing Xiao Wenwan from her predicament. Xiao Wenwan covered her neck with a sickly expression and coughed violently. Before she could recover from her shock, a loud explosion sounded. A zombie suddenly jumped down from the roof of the carriage and directly stared at Xiao Wenwan. Ah! Xiao Wenwan let out a blood-curdling scream and pushed her mother over without thinking. This push directly pushed her mother into the zombie's embrace. Crack! Old Lady Qiao's left leg was instantly broken by the zombie. She was trembling from the pain, but her eyes were filled with disbelief. At the critical moment of life and death, her own daughter actually pushed her out to die as a scapegoat. This was her youngest daughter whom she had doted on for more than 10 years, whom she had held in her hands and protected in her heart every day, whom she could not bear to let suffer the slightest bit of grievance. Mother! Xiao Zhongbang's pupils constricted. He threw the broken crossbow onto the zombie's head, raised his fist, and pounced. Don't come over here. Don't come over here. Xiao Wenwan kicked her legs and screamed as she moved to Wei Ziqin's side. At this time, half of the carriage's walls had already collapsed. Only Wei Ziqin, her daughter, and little Tiger's side was still fine. Arbor had been guarding outside their carriage the entire time. No matter how many zombies rushed over, she would heavily sweep them down with her mystic energy. Stay Up Late had already released his mystical beasts to deal with the pursuers. Most of the corpse puppets were blocked by him, and did not chase after them. This gave Arbor's group a chance to catch their breath. Xiao Yao stretched out her leg, and kicked the zombie that was strangling the old lady. Xiao Yao reached out to grab Xiao Zhongbang. When she turned her head in a moment of distraction, she saw Xiao Wenwan pouncing over to snatch Xiaolin, from Wei Ziqin's arms as if she had lost her mind. Younger sister you? She saw Xiao Wenwan fiercely tugging at Xiaolin,'s arms and legs, trying to snatch the child away from her. She did not care if the child's arms and legs were about to be torn off. As the child cried out in pain, Wei Ziqin did not dare to snatch the child away from her. She loosened her grip slightly, and Xiao Wenwan seized the opportunity to snatch the child away. What are you doing? Xiao Yao angrily shouted, her eyes filled with anger. Wah! The slow foodie finally realized that she was scared. She kicked her short legs and tried her best to twist her body, repeatedly calling for her mother. Chapter 128. Keep me safe. I want you to keep me safe. Xiao Wenwan fiercely ordered Xiao Yao. Her left hand hugged Xiaolin, while her right hand tightly gripped Xiaolin's neck. Her face was distorted. Don't come over, or I'll strangle her to death. Don't come over. Xiao Wenwan screamed at the top of her lungs, her entire body violently shaking along with the jolting carriage. It's all because you forced me, you forced me. You abandoned me and didn't care about me. You threw me into the zombie horde. This damned girl even said she wanted to feed me to the zombies. I'm telling you, before I die, none of you should think about living. Xiao Wenwan, let go of me. Xiao Zhongbang was both shocked and furious, and his voice changed. Do you know what you're doing? I know better than anyone else. Xiao Wenwan gripped Xiaolin's neck with a distorted face and sneered. I'm a trash that can be abandoned at any time. It's fine if Arbor doesn't respect me, his little aunt, but even you, big brother, treat me like this. I'm telling you, if I die, Xiaolin definitely won't live either. I demand that you immediately send me to a safe area. You can't let any of the zombies harm me. Wei Ziqin was so angry that her face turned white, and she couldn't say a single word. Wah! Xiaolin was uncomfortable from Xiao Wenjuan's strangling. She twisted her chubby body and tightly hugged her peach as she wailed loudly. Shut up! Xiao Zhongxing drove the carriage and finally rushed through the zombie horde blocking the road. He could only hear the whistling of the wind. At this time, his nerves had slightly calmed down, and he also heard Xiaolin's cries. At the same time, Arbor was standing on the axle and looking at the forest road. The slow-moving zombies still persistently followed their carriage without giving up. Arbor tightly gripped the ferrule in his hand and mobilized all the profound energy stored in his Dantian's mystic domain. including all the profound energy flowing in his profound veins. The originally listless sapling immediately discovered her abnormality and couldn't help but anxiously call out, "Master, what are you doing? What you're doing will damage your profound veins." Arbor's sleeves fluttered in the wind, but there was no expression on his little face. His deep eyes coldly stared at the group of zombies behind him. "Master." The little tree's call was thrown to the back of her mind. At this moment, the surging profound energy in his body exploded out with a loud bang, and all of it condensed on the ferrule in his hand. Inky emitted a bright black light. At the same time, a gorgeous flame suddenly gushed out from the ferrule. Arbor was stunned for a moment, but the flame was like a nimble snake. With a whoosh, it plunged into the group of zombies behind it. Bang! The corpse puppet that was touched by the flames immediately exploded into pieces by the raging flames. The entire carriage, because of Arbor's ferocious profound energy, split open the walls of the carriage. This time, the carriage had completely transformed into an open-top handcart. Arbor's cold gaze instantly landed on Xiao Wenwan, who was choking Shaolin Er's neck. Xiao Wenwan shuddered for no reason, only feeling that those serene eyes were as terrifying as ice. "You're courting death." It was a nice soft voice, but it revealed a dense murderous aura, causing people to be endlessly terrified. The ferrule suddenly flew out of his hand and knocked away Xiao Wenjuan's arm, then flew back into Arbor's hand. Arbor leaped and reached out to grab the little foodie, stuffing her back into his mother's embrace. He kicked Xiao Wenwan off the handcart and onto the ground. The carriage stopped. Arbor's entire body charged towards Xiao Wenwan like a cannonball, and his fist fiercely smashed into Xiao Wenjuan's stomach. Chapter 129. Xiao Wenwan rolled on the ground and cried out in pain. "Arbor, you disrespectful little bastard. How dare you treat me like this?" Arbor did not give her a chance to protest. He punched her in the stomach twice. Xiao Wenwan felt her organs burn, and she spat out blood. Her face contorted even more, and she pointed shakily at Xiao Mu as she shrieked, You little beast!" Bang! Arbor raised his arm and punched Xiao Wenjuan's chin. Xiao Wenwan could even hear the sound of her jaw cracking. She was sent flying backwards by a huge force, landing heavily on the ground and rolling for a while. She was on the verge of death and almost couldn't get up. "I was fighting the zombies outside, but you held my sister hostage and stabbed me in the back. No team would want trash like this." Arbor's voice was extremely cold. His eyes were so cold that they could shoot out ice blades. Xiao Wenjuan's actions reminded her of her so-called friend in her previous life. When they betrayed their teammates without hesitation, they did not have any psychological burden. Their hearts were already full of holes from greed, jealousy, and hatred. They did not have a conscience. "Aoyi," Xiao Mu coldly called out as she stiffly stood there with her two small fists clenched. A black figure appeared beside her. "Little mistress, please give me your orders. Throw this woman away. Don't let me see her again." "Yes." Stay Up Late stepped forward and grabbed the back of Xiao Wenjuan's collar. He lifted her up easily. Xiao Wenjuan's eyes widened in shock. Her body trembled as she roared, "How dare you? How dare you treat me like this? How dare you? Big brother! Big brother, second brother! Mother! Big brother, save me! Save me! Arbor wants to kill me! Mother! Mother!" It was not that the old lady did not hear her daughter's panicked cries, but she could not move because of her broken leg. She lay upright in the carriage, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Even now, she still hadn't recovered from the blow she had received. Xiao Wenwan screamed and kicked the ground. She glared at Arbor as if she wanted to stare a hole in her body. Stay Up Late knocked her on the back of her neck. Xiao Wenjuan's head drooped, and she finally stopped screaming. Xiao Mu watched as Aoyi picked up Xiao Wenwan and disappeared into the distance in a few leaps. Only then did Xiao Mu retract her cold gaze and turn around just in time to meet her father's complicated gaze. "I can tolerate naivety, stupidity, and even coldness. It doesn't matter." She did not care about them and could completely ignore them. Xiao Mu spoke with a calm expression, but Xiao Zhongbang kept feeling that his daughter's gaze seemed to have pierced through time and landed elsewhere. My bottom line is, at least when we are teammates, don't stab each other in the back. It's that simple. After saying this, Xiaomu glanced at the convertible handcart. Second uncle said, Xiangyang town is just up ahead. It shouldn't be a problem to find some materials to build a simple cart. Then let's go. Qiao Zhongbang also jumped into the car and sat beside Qiao Zhongxing without saying a word. Qiao Zhongbang patted him on the shoulder. Qiao Zhongbang smiled bitterly. Second brother, I think little sister asked for it this time. He knew very well that if it wasn't for his daughter, Qiao Wenwan would have died on the spot. Chapter 130. The open flatbed started moving, pulling a cart full of people into town. Xiangyang town and Anshan town were neighbors, and the two towns were about the same size. However, compared to Anshan town, which was completely empty, Xiangyang town could only be described as chaotic. As soon as the cart drove in, the entire street was filled with people looting and smashing. An elderly woman hugged a bag of rice to her chest and did her best to stop a burly man from snatching it, but she was slapped to the ground in the end. Several lost children were separated from adults and were wailing on the side of the street. How chaotic could the word chaotic be used to describe it? A middle-aged woman was pushed onto the flatbed cart. Her eyes fell on the pink, chubby peach in the little foodie's arms, and she immediately reached out to snatch it. The little foodie jumped in fright and cried out in her childish voice, "What are you doing? Robbery." The corners of Arbor's mouth twitched with exasperation. He slapped the back of the woman's neck and kicked her crooked body off the flatbed cart. Second uncle drove the cart through the crowd. From time to time, someone bumped into the flatbed cart and was rudely pushed away by Arbor. After the flatbed cart passed the main street and turned a corner, the chaotic situation became slightly better. Second uncle jumped out of the cart and picked up wooden planks from the side of the street. After organizing them a little, he built a simple shed on the collapsed cart to protect them from the sun and rain. The cart kept moving forward, the wheels rolling. Arbor glanced at the elderly woman and saw her lying there in shock. She didn't react for a long time. The elderly woman's leg should be broken, but this town is in turmoil. There's probably no place to find a doctor. Wei Ziqin sighed. How about we go to the clinic to try our luck? Qiao Zhongbang muttered softly. Qiao Zhongxing shook his head. There definitely won't be anyone in the clinic. I reckon it'll be a wasted trip. Sister, this time the peach. Perhaps the incident with the middle-aged woman just now had made the little foodie feel threatened, so she planned to eat the peach. Arbor didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he patted her little head. You eat it. He then took out a box of ointment from the bag and said to Wei Ziqin, Mother, support her. Jojo's medicine? Someone gave it to me. Arbor skillfully set the old lady's bones. His movements were as smooth as water, causing everyone to be stunned. In fact, Arbor also felt that it was very strange. It seemed that as soon as her hand touched the patient, her brain would automatically generate a treatment plan, and her hand would move freely. It was as if she had treated countless people's bones and applied medicine countless times. Jojo? Qiao Zhongbang never knew that his daughter's medical skills were so good, especially when the carriage was still moving. Jojo's gestures were so precise, it was simply incredible. Arbor lifted his stoic little face and chuckled at the dumbfounded people. You might not believe me when I say this, but I know a little about simple bone setting and bandaging. Qiao Zhongxing was a bit speechless. He glanced at his little stoic niece and really wanted to say, Your proficient hand gestures are clearly not slightly exclamation point. Arbor furrowed her brows in vexation and chuckled again. For some reason, the three adults looked at each other in dismay and couldn't help but want to laugh. Actually, it would have been better if he hadn't chuckled. This child just had to let out a strange laugh, and his face was tense and motionless. It was completely out of place. After Arbor finished applying the ointment, she found a wooden board to hold the old lady's wound in place, and couldn't help but glance at her again. She knew very well that the bone-setting process wasn't pleasant, but the old lady didn't even grunt the entire time. After Arbor finished treating her, the old lady lifted her head and nodded awkwardly at Arbor, either out of shame or shame. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.